Their general managers and owners are like, yeah, we've got a 10-man roster. We can pull in anybody. And what that means is it's like we lose a game. Who are we switching out this week? Like, let's go to the Reddit comments. Okay. Ooh, looks like Meteos. Not looking very good. Let's send him to Academy for a bit.
Hello and welcome to The Dive, Season 8, Episode 1, and everything is normal and just how it always has been.
Yep, I'm here again.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Anything new happened lately?
Did anyone see any announcements on social media regarding the LCS in 2024? Nope. Not me.
No.
Here for work again.
Yeah, some things have changed. He doesn't actually respond to Mark anymore. It has to be the Commissioner Z, Mr. Commissioner Sir, Captain, Glorious Leader, any of those.
Yeah. Anything to submit my authority over people, they have to have something, yeah.
Well, Sir Zimmerman, what have you actually been up to? Because the commissioner kind of started out as like, when Dave first started calling Greeley the commish, I thought it was like mostly meme, Like what did he actually even do?
Well, so
and now that you've taken over, I'm even more confused.
It's a small lineage, because I think it was Nick Allen to start, then Hunter, then Greeley, then Jackie, then me. So it's a small club. I feel like what the commissioner has focused on the most over the years has changed based off like what's needed. Like Greeley obviously has a law background, and when you're setting up franchising, that might be very, very useful to have. And it's like, that's not my background. I have more content-y background kind of thing, and that's obviously some of the areas I'm leaning into more, but also competitive background as a coach. So the changes that we're making obviously affect the competitive background. It's nice to be able to anticipate that kind of stuff. So the roles changed over the years, but it's more or less the same thing. Your product head is like the official title, which means there's a lot of different teams that work on the LCS. There's engineering, there's broadcast, there's comp ops, there's comms, there's a bunch of people, and you interface with all of them to like try to put the best product as a whole forward to the fans and for people.
Has it been weird making the transition for you? Because it's, like I know obviously we had talked last year, you're interviewing and looking for after this job for a while. So obviously you had some time to maybe think about it. But for a lot of people, it's going to be this kind of like appearance of like, wait, he was a caster yesterday and he's the commissioner today. Like, what the hell happened?
What's possible?
Like,
everything's possible in America.
Like, is it a weird transition for you? Because at the end of the day, it's like people who were your coworkers, you're now kind of like their boss. People who were kind of your boss are now like working under you. You know what I mean? Like the dynamics are kind of different.
I guess maybe it feels different for other people.
I feel weird right now.
I was going to say, maybe the power dynamic has shifted. I haven't noticed.
Cowering in fear, you could just squash us like a bug.
We can't make fun of him.
To be clear, that is not what the commissioner could do, really.
Like that, Kobe.
No.
One wrong move.
Under the table, he's got a knife.
That's what I have to do. I have to rely on physical
threat. He just has a button. If he presses the button, like...
The seat ejects you out and a new person comes in.
It's props from catching up with double lift, but much more violent now.
Yeah, well, that was I was going to do a tweet at the start of December, right when I got the job, and be like, hey, yeah, so you're actually just making the whole LCS catching up with double lift when they play. So like, there'll be rats chewing on their cables when they're playing, and like First Blood gets like a slime cannon in their face, and no, I thought that people. Yeah, now that I'm the commissioner, I have to be slightly more serious with my public persona, unfortunately.
Dude, Nickelodeon Day. I'm down for sliming, yeah.
Yeah. No, it hasn't been that weird for me. And like I said, maybe it feels different for other people to talk with me. I hope not. I think...
Very weird.
It was, like you said, a long time coming. So once I finally officially started... I shouldn't say it's a long time coming, but it was something I've been pursuing for a little while.
For quite a while.
Yeah. So like... Once I was able to start, it was very much like, okay, rip the Band-Aid off, tell me everything I need to know, like org charts, information on budgeting, how does this work, where does all the money flow, all those sorts of questions. Whereas like immediately learn that, but at the same time, because it was pretty late, like middle of December when I officially started, it was like, the ideas that we're trying for this year, we got to start right now. And so it's like, you're supposed to take it slow and learn, but also we didn't have that much time.
Yep.
So there was a lot of conversations that we had to pull right away. But more or less, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable, I think, with what the work is. It's like mostly just like, hey, person, let's hop in a room and talk.
Send an email, schedule a 3-hour lunch, head on home.
Yeah. Yep, a lot of meetings. Just talk to people. You talk to people, you schedule things, you write up documents, make some decks, make some spreadsheets.
MarkZ is typing away.
Going like this.
It's like the meme of that person. It's just like...
It's like, Mark, you got the notes from that meeting, right? It's all just random gibberish.
I mean,
wingdings.
I am excited that some of the ideas that just bounce around, when people are just talking after show and stuff like that, like you actually get to implement a lot of things, coming right out of the gate, being on live patch is super exciting. Having the faster transition times, all these changes are really fun. Speaking of like the catching up with double lift though, I do feel like you're transitioning and moving on after like, what was his peak of content creation last year? Last year was
That's true.
Was,
He went out
was
on top,
peak Mark. Mark was peaking, and he's like, all right,
Nah, dude.
time to
After nearly a
promote now.
decade of middling performance, unmemorable content, he finally struck gold, and then he's just out of there.
I'm glad you think that was my peak last year, because otherwise I would have said peak was like 2016, the silver scrapes on the stage. 'Cause that's what everyone always references. I was like, my peak was like 6 years ago. I've been
was a good one,
sliding
too.
down for a long time.
Or when you were working with offline TV,
That was peak, yeah.
Catching him with double lift was really good. Are You Smarter Than? Really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that kind of stuff will hopefully continue into this year. Catching up with
Are You
is a little
Smarter
more
Than
specific.
is continuing.
Yeah.
We
So like,
can say that.
Kobe's going to do catching up with double lift.
yep, signing him up right now. So I think there'll still be a lot of cool content. I don't think it like directly hinged on me or anything. So I'm not. It's whatever. I think fans will still
Very
be
replaceable.
I agree.
Extremely replaceable.
Plug and play. and all three of us, honestly.
We just need to hire another Mark.
Yeah.
That's actually why they got Rafa. They backfilled the Mark position.
Yeah.
Ah.
Slight change with the C versus the K.
Yeah. Trying to change it up a little bit and not make it obvious.
Yeah. Well, now I focus on other things like let's play on live patch. Let's do.
All right, I know all that stuff already. Give me your next big one. Come on, juicy dive drops. What's the spoilers?
So it's funny is I always get like cagey around this because you don't want to like overpromise, underdeliver, and everyone's like, "What? You said this and then that." So I probably can't leak anything, unfortunately. And this can't be here. But offline, you want to hear me cooking? I guess we're teams are always cooking up ideas.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to hit you with some of the questions then, because some people were talking about, all right, we have less teams now. Why BO1 versus BO3? That's one that I've heard. The other one that I've heard people talk about a lot is, okay, we're doing this faster transition time. Cool. What does that entail for the competitive integrity with the draft changes? Because now coaches can talk to their team for, I don't know what it is, 10 minutes or whatever after draft. So those are two things that I've heard people wondering about a lot, because I think most people who watch the dive will have heard we're going on live patch, we're having faster transition times. There's a lot of cool changes for the league, but why not some
I
of the
like
other
it.
things?
Hit him with two questions at once.
Boom.
Boom.
And then if he answers the other one first, you're wrong.
I can always just go into the corporate slug, as you've called me on Hotline League. I can always go slug mode and just not answer the questions and dodge. No, so the best of one's pretty easy to answer, just like with what's going to be more impactful changes and what's going to separate the LCS more as like a unique identity and brand. Like there's other regions that play best of three. Best of threes are cool. I'm not going to say that they're not. It's just that if you're trying to make something a splashier change, I think live patch and the reduced transition times are splashier. And the scope of these is pretty big in terms of the amount of work that needs to get done to make sure that you feel comfortable debuting these in what was effectively a month between like saying, we are definitely pursuing this. Let's check all the boxes and make sure we're ready to like say that we're going to do this. And then you get to that point and you still have some more checks to do to be like 100%. And if you're also like, okay, well, let's design how the entire workflow of the day goes for teams. Like when do they need to get to the studio? When are they going to do this? When are they going to do that? And we're best of threes on top of it. It begins like one, just operationally for all the teams and people who have to figure out how all this works. That becomes a burden, as well as because we haven't done single stream best of three before, it begins to muddy the viewership data. And so if we're going to best of one single round robin, something we know and understand how viewership ebbs and flows across the split, we can say like, hey, looking at our data now, like it's clear that the transition times is working and the live patch is working, or it's,
So that Mark
or
won't
it's
be
not.
back next year.
Yeah, this is a big failure. I'm out of here, guys. So one, it's a control variable. Two, it's just like you have to pick your battles and you can't just like change everything at once because it just becomes too much work for all the teams to sync on. So these are the big bets that we made, and in the future we'll evaluate the other things.
Big bets, nice.
Big bets,
Corporate.
Big bets, evaluate synergies.
All right, quick. He asked two questions at once. You better get the second one.
Competitive integrity. Who cares? Honestly. This was a big thing for us. We actually talked to teams, players association, and the owners and the GMs in separate meetings in December, and put this on their radar and had conversations with them about like what would be your flags, what would be your best version. Like if we're going for this, how would you like to see some of this included? So like we were pretty, I don't want to say ambivalent, but like open to suggestions on how many people should be in the room when you're drafting if you're in a practice room. And they said like the two stage coaches, how many people, if you're going backstage, do you think should be there? Should you have access to the internet? Like these sorts of things. We had our own opinions. Comp Ops made suggestions, but we listened to players too and like worked as an ecosystem to come up with something that is honestly, hopefully not super disruptive compared to things like a fearless draft. Like you're still best of one, regular draft just happening a little bit earlier. And then there's like 5 to 10 minutes, hopefully, where they're maybe backstage and waiting, and we're not going to limit their conversation. They can talk, so there will be slightly more pregame planning. But I don't.
With the coach there.
With the coach there, coaches, we went back and forth on it a little bit, but like, keeping players focused. And so they're not just like 5 players messing around like in a back room, like, and they get distracted by the time they're on stage,
They're like animals. You leave them alone for like 2 minutes and they just wander
Are you
off.
telling me that's not a concern? Because that's a concern. Coaches,
2 of them are asleep. One of them's gone.
Yeah. So no. It says like if you have the coaches there to keep the teams focused and their leaders on the team, have them there to, So like we tried to put the teams in the best position to do this. And we're ready to adjust if there's like big feedback one way or the other. But
it's interesting because already with some of the changes, there's going to be a way higher importance of having really good coaching staff this year.
Yeah.
Just simply because of the live patch thing.
Yeah.
But if we also have this, I feel like this year, one of the biggest shifts that people aren't focusing on because there's so many things happening is that when we're evaluating teams, and we're doing our power rankings later in this episode, coaching staff, which has always historically been really hard to pin down because you don't have perfect information on how good they are, what they do, and everything they do behind the scenes, is going to be really, really big for scouting, the analysts that they have on the teams for the new patch stuff. And since you're going to have extra time with them after the draft already to plan stuff, I feel like the coaches are going to have to earn their pay a bit more this year.
You know who else will have to? The analysts.
Yeah.
They'll actually have to know what's going on in the game. When you guys are casting, you won't have 2 weeks of data to just lean on solo queue. You guys got to be
League of Legends every day.
Yeah, you guys got to be on top of
problem.
it.
I mean,
You're going to see some whack builds.
I already do that because I'm turbo addicted to grinding, and so I'm always trying to figure out what freak let through that's going to be OP.
I've heard some tricky stuff for week 1. 14-1, they're like, the double support item bot lanes and stuff like that. The other cool thing about being online.
Dude, that's old. They already released the preview for 14.2.
Have you heard about the 2-1-2 stuff that some teams apparently were practicing? They're doing like, jungle top laning together and with double support item top and double support item bot.
I was talking about how back when I started as an analyst, like forever ago, we had Targons had just come out, and we did some of that where we have 4 Targons running around the map. So times a flat circle or something.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, but also we get to 14-2 faster. So like 14-1, every region is debuting on this, but then our week 2 is going to be 14-2. So whatever changes that just got released on Twitter, whatever that like change list is, like be studying that analyst to that point. Like you guys got to be on top of that because like you might be able to.
He's threatening us.
I thought he was
I meant
He's
team,
threatening us.
No,
He's live on broadcast.
I meant team analyst. To his point about coaching staff being more important.
He was looking right at you when he said it.
I know.
I saw it.
And the look in his eyes was like very
Let's take a minute to talk about how
Let's get a quick action replay. You better be reading those patch notes.
There is some nomenclature in the scene that makes it difficult to decide who you're talking to. Like, do we have internal?
And Mark was very clearly talking to us.
because I mentioned the team analyst. I
That's
thought
what I
for
meant.
sure that's what he was going to go for. But then, the way he was saying it and the way he was looking was like threatening.
I meant both.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to be on top of it.
You're right. I think it is because he is commissioner now. It's really threatening.
It's the power dynamic.
one of the changes we haven't
Your
talked
life
about.
flashes before your eyes.
One of the changes we haven't talked about is more interactive broadcasts. I'm like, if y'all want to read
God.
Twitch chat now, please read Twitch chat, and you're going to be dealing with them being like, Kobe, why are they building this item?
all of the changes, I was like, yes, oh, this is so good. Oh my God, live patch, all this stuff. And then Mark's like, all right, and we're going to have you talking directly to Twitch chat during the game. And I was like, what the fuck? Whoa, we do not want to unleash the floodgates of Twitch chat onto our live broadcast. So we'll have some filters.
It's an opt-in mentality.
Yeah.
Captain Flowers was very excited about reading Twitch
We're
chat.
working on the process, and there's going to be a filter, and
It should be fun.
We're open to change. So
Yeah.
we're going to try some things and then make adjustments if necessary.
I'm down for it. I'm kind of curious. What do you think? With the changes to drafting, since they have more time to talk, I've heard multiple different takes on this. Do you think it will make teams more or less creative? Because one side of the argument is that cheat picks won't be good anymore because they have too much time to think about what they want to do in game to answer them. And then the other side is like cheese picks and stuff like that are going to be better because it's actually more important to know exactly how you want to play it so they can discuss that it's kind of like interesting. I've heard both sides of that from coaches and players, thinking that it's going to make drafts more or less standard.
Same with like how live patch factors into that too, because like you might not know a
Will you
matchup.
default to comfort because you're worried about the new patch, or will you try cooking up some crazy stuff?
Yeah, it's honestly hard to predict. So like,
I mean, it's person dependent also.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is what I would say. Because I know Insanity is super down. I was already like going back and forth with him on different broken build things, and like, yeah, some of the players will definitely be in there.
yeah, so that's like we don't, we can guess, and what we're hoping for is
you're
like leaning
guessing.
towards the craziness, but you don't know what people are gonna do. And there's also like, to be honest, patch to patch, when you look at pro play, it's like still 80% the same champions usually. So I don't think it's like necessarily as disruptive as you might initially think.
Depends on the patch though.
It depends on the patch, and like the reality is also that like even if it's 90% the same, you don't want to lose the 10%, or like if people do go hyper conservative because they just don't feel comfortable, like you don't want to lose that 10%, or like you don't want to blow it out now so it's like 50% turnover every single patch. And like there's a middle ground that we want to find.
So the reason why I'm like on the camp of it will have more people trying more unique stuff and trying to use what's broken now is because they're even though there's a lot of people that are like, oh, they always just want to wait and copy Korea and all that. We actually, because we're so quick, we won't have as much time for the hotfix patches. Previously, part of the delay also meant that we were always hotfixing the biggest and most egregious things that got left through. And I feel like with that less time and us being more quickly on live patch, there'll be like a higher chance that there is something more broken
crazy stuff coming
before Bounce team has had, they like to collect enough data to be sure about a change. And so I feel like the window is smaller now, so I feel like there will be more of that getting through.
Yeah, there's as I understand from Time and Balance, and I don't want to like speak for another team, but
you're going to right now.
Well, as I understand it, the hot fixes always go 24 hours ish after the patch goes out. Whatever doesn't get hit there makes it for pro play anyways. Like Static Shiv LeBlanc in the start of summer this year was like hot fixed once, but still then was hit later on in real patches, and so we still saw a lot of Static Shiv shenanigans. So like there's always some level of it that gets through. It's just that now on the LCS, we're the first ones that crack at it. So we get to like see, and I think it's a huge opportunity for our pro players to be like, if you're the world's first Smolder, or like world's first with this build, or world's first whatever, like you also have an opportunity. It's like kind of metagamey to be like, get some eyeballs on you, and not just, but like
content around it.
Yeah, and that, like I think that gives us a direction as well as a product to be like, hey, we'll have a lot of world firsts here, and we're going to have more educational content and things hopefully to cover this as it happens.
Yep. I'm really excited for it because from talking to, I talked to basically every team, players or coaches, or both. And it's really funny. So many people, like no one's naming names, but so many people are like, yeah, well now there's always this group that just says, no, let's just wait for LCK and LPL, and we got to play this. And they message their LCK friends and tell us that this is what we have to play. And they're like, they can't tell us that anymore. Like they're like, we're going to be unleashed.
All the chefs that have been cooking, but like, have been told no, they can't anymore.
But it's like everyone's telling me that. So I'm like, you all can't have been wanting to do this or you would have done it. But people seem really excited about the idea that it's like, forced innovation, right? You can't just sit back and say, well, this is what T1 played, so this is what we're going to practice this week. You have to be willing to actually figure it out yourself. And I do think that some teams are going to struggle with that. Some players are going to struggle with that. And I think others are going to be able to innovate and get that, extra advantage. And I hope that really does force our teams to get better at adapting, because even when you go into international, like playoffs is going to be static on one patch. It's going to be similar to Worlds and MSI and so on. But even within one patch, innovation is so important. And we see that at Worlds and MSI and stuff every single year, that the teams that are fastest to adapt to the patch, the teams that are fastest to find the new strategies and stuff, are often the ones that get a big advantage. And I'm kind of hopeful that it's going to make our teams that do go international dig a little bit deeper and be better at actually finding new strategies and innovating, and hopefully having more confidence to bring those to stage, right? Because you always hear these whispers about these crazy strategies that don't make the stage because people end up just going more default stuff. But if you get more practice playing new things, throughout this system, hey, maybe we'll get more of that internationally too.
100%. I'm on board with that. And I also think you should be more willing to try those types of things that you're unsure about if you're one of the bottom teams, one of the lower teams. So that's why within our league, I'll probably be looking pretty heavily at a lot of the bottom 4 teams for doing the super extreme stuff. But if we're looking internationally, let's be honest, It's LPL and LCK at the top, so we are a bottom half, region.
And then us clearly number 3, having destroyed G2 at
All right,
Worlds.
so we might not.
But we need to be willing, like if we're gonna take down, LCK and LPL, then we need to be willing to be confident in, hey, I'm super good at this. Let's play this, even though they're playing something completely different and they're following their meta. Let's jump on, whatever we think is actually OP for us.
And content is king. I don't care about international success. Ha ha ha. No, now we're going to have.
That was weird.
Zhao, no, I'm just saying like Zhao, who's going to be like, hey, Palafox is a genius mind about the whatever he's playing, because all of them have to watch us now. So all of our pros are going to be getting referenced hopefully in scrims when they're like, LCS did this. I saw Palafox play this champion now, and he did well at Worlds. He pooped on caps. So I guess we got to take him seriously.
I heard it.
Mentally, Freudian slip.
The actual midfield genius. Will emerge. Yeah. I'm definitely excited for it.
Yeah, it should be awesome. So you've been here for how many years? Were you on the dive? Was it like 3, 4? It's been a while now.
Beginning of 2019 or 18?
Wow, so even more. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, because I came in when Jat joined the balance team the first time.
He left a couple times. I lose track.
Yeah, well, he went to TL and he did the balance team. I think I came in and subbed in here on the balance team one.
So was that 2018 or something?
Well, we did all of 2018 together on the analyst desk, me and him. So I think that would have had to have been 2019.
Okay, so you did 4 years basically. 4 years of service on the dive.
4 years of service, man. I'm free. Get me out of here. I served my term.
Yeah.
I'm not running again.
Yeah.
Get me out, dude.
Do you have kind of like a favorite moment or anything? I mean, it's like, what are you gonna miss most, I guess, from the dive or just from casting and stuff in general, right? Because it is like, obviously you've always been someone who's really, really passionate about the content and like the kind of other side of it, which is why I have a lot of confidence that you're actually going to do really well in this job. Please don't fire me. But it like, your life and your change, like there's some big changes here, right? So like, what are you going to miss most?
I don't know about miss, because I'm someone who actually gets like very bored in a sense very quickly, and like
Absolutely nothing. That's the answer.
He was so bored.
He was so sick of
I
us.
just mean like I very much enjoy doing new things. I'm usually not like looking back wistfully at the thing that's like
Bored of looking at our stupid faces.
I'm just saying that like I always get excited by the newer thing more than like I get like sad about the old thing. So I'm not even like, what have I given up to do that? It doesn't even cross my mind, honestly. But I will say like I do have some very fun memories. I think the day that we both did our cosplays, where I was like Dark Star Guardian or Elemental Lux, and you were Ezreal. That was a pretty classic
that
one.
was looking good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird stuff of me on the internet that I'm like, not on them commissioner. Should I delete that?
Were you were there for the like the ice bath thing that the ice bath bet? Did you have to do
I
that?
don't think he was.
We had a couple of those on the analyst desk, but if there was one here, I don't think I did.
I don't think he was.
I didn't
that
do
before
one.
him?
We definitely both did it. He was on the dive.
Yeah, where were
but
you
He
for
wasn't.
that?
I don't remember him.
Were you just laughing
doing
at
it
us?
or being there?
I don't remember if I was there or not.
That was horrible.
Maybe I think it was a bet between me and you. Maybe that's why only us.
yeah,
we did
but
it.
he
were
would-
always
You don't
mad
even
about
remember
tracking.
watching
you would have had to
us?
be there.
I don't remember. The only bet I remember.
It was truly painful. That is what I remember.
The bet that I
it's
remember-
memorable.
I did cold exposure today before coming here.
the bet I remember
Sick.
best is the time that I took Cloud9 versus the field against you, and
then you
were
won. That was the
roasting me.
worst
Yeah,
bet
and
of
I
all
won.
time.
What do you mean? How's it a bad bet if you win?
It was actually a terrible bet.
I love how like salty he is about this. It's
Yeah.
like, nah, dude, Cloud9 was clearly the best team. The percentages favored them. I don't know why you took the field. You're
Okay.
trolling. Yeah.
That's funny.
I don't remember. I don't think we ever paid that bet off. I just remember.
Our producer just said Mark was definitely there for the ice bath one. He didn't remember.
Like
you
I
go.
said, on to bigger and better things. I don't,
Delete all the useless memories.
yeah, I don't know.
Can you know our names anymore? It's like, who are these people?
Cabin Flowers. And... Hey, you. What's up? That's the greeting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's your long-term vision for the LCS? Are we in good hands here with Mark? What's 5 years down the line?
Yeah.
5 years in esports
be
is a
prosperous?
long time. Yeah. Big picture goals are increasing fan sentiment or just like enjoyment of the product. Big picture. I think like there's been some wins over the years, but like there's not been like a holistic. Fans are happy about everything the product's doing. Like you can't always be everything, but like not just talent or broadcast segments or YouTube pieces or whatever. Like overall with the whole product, the fans are happy with it. I feel like that's a huge win. Sustainability in esports is obviously a big topic in general. So, we have some partners joining us, Kia and all that stuff. We had like a big announcement about that. So yeah, I think if fans are happy and we're making some money, like things are pretty gravy. I think there's always viewership metrics and growth, but those are more like metrics are. I've was listening to a podcast and they're talking about like metrics are like a measure of something that's true, but they're not the truth, So like it doesn't really matter some of the metrics as long as like the actual truth is there. So if fans are happy, the actual specific number matters a lot less to me.
Yeah. Sometimes if you put a metric on something, then I'll be looking for the loophole to
artificially hack the
boost
metric.
it.
Yeah, exactly. You start doing the wrong things because you're just chasing a metric. So
Sweet. Well, thank you for making time in your busy day, Mr. Commissioner.
of course,
It was nice.
I have so many meetings I must get to now.
Should we like bow when you leave or?
No, as long as you don't let anyone else sit in
Do
this
you have
chair.
like a theme song?
I'm taking this chair. We're gonna
Oh, about that.
yeah, no theme song. No.
All
All right,
Well,
you can go now. We got someone new.
It's been real. Yeah,
All right.
it's been nice having you on the dive. Nice working with you, and we'll never see you again.
Yeah, catch you never.
Because next, Meteos is going to be on, and we're going to do some power rankings.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, Season 8, Episode number 1. We've got a new host joining us. Meteos is here. No more Mark.
No more, Mark.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have you joining. When we were talking about like who we could maybe get or who we want, you were one of the first people Kobe and I were talking about because you've been around forever. You actually are one of the ex-pros who is super in touch with the league because you co-stream LCS as well. So you're watching all the games, a legend of the scene. So I'm really happy that you could actually join.
I mean, I was stoked when I heard about the opportunity. They said, "You want to be a host?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. That sounds sick."
Yeah, I always love like talking jungle and talking random things about the LCS with Meteos.
Plus,
And he
we're
throws
both WoW degenerates.
great barbecues too.
True.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you arena? I see you on all the time. And Druid is really good with a DH. So I've always been like, oh man, I should ask him. Does he play Boomy?
On and off seasonally.
Okay.
I mostly played hang out with my brother and my friends.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a social game for me, but I have been playing a lot of League in the new season. It's been pretty fun.
How are you finding the map changes? Because obviously this is one of the biggest preseasons they've done, or new seasons, whatever you want to call it. I guess there wasn't a preseason in a long time, which I was really excited about because it felt like the game was kind of getting a little bit stale to me. They hadn't made any
Last
big
couple of
changes.
years, yeah, was not that many changes.
But the map itself actually changing significantly has been one of my favorite things about playing these last couple weeks.
Dude, the geography of the map changing has been messing me up so much. Like that wall on, like from river to blue buff on bottom side, I cannot wrap my head around that wall being there. Like every single time I'm trying to path, my character starts going up. I'm like, where are you going? Like you don't need to go that way, but I do. So that one's super different. And then the other one that gets me is like that wall in top lane.
The red side top lane.
Yeah, I feel like if you're blue side trying to gank top lane, like just don't. Like
You can only dive.
Yeah, there's just no way to do it. And it's like, so dangerous to actually go to their Krugs now because you're just trapped in there. So
that wall is massive. I
Yeah.
will say I've actually found more success, just going lane ganks now. Because the top laners are like, all right, we're so safe. No one's ever going to come up here. And then if you just come up through a lane gank, I feel like for some reason, like they stopped warding their own lane bushes and stuff.
yeah, no, that's true. Lane ganks are
Get
always
lane everywhere, Kobe.
Yeah, true.
I swear lane ganks are like the highest percentage of working, but like I don't know, I just never think to do it. I'm like, that's too far from my jungle camps.
Sometimes when it's a grub timing, I got a guy to get my grubs. I actually think the grubs being introduced is one of my favorite new additions because there are just so many objectives on the map now. And it's so early in the game and you have options. I really like that their design is with 3. So even if the other person has priority on them and is doing them, I can go in and like smite steal one, because they can only smite one of them, one of the 3. Or I can just yoink one and then leave, and I don't have to deal with the extra big shield on the other 2 and the extra time investment and stuff. I just feel like it's really refreshing to have an objective that isn't just go up to it, stand and tank it, and it's one thing, and you better win the smite fight flip, or whatever. So it seems more interesting than the other ones.
Yeah, I mean it's fresh. I like that. I've always been a big fan of like the huge changes for preseason. And I honestly kind of wish there were more jungle changes because, I mean, you guys remember, like, for a long time, it was like every single season, the jungle is just completely different. Like, it's non-recognizable. And I kind of like that because right now we've had, like, the same jungle monsters and whatnot. Like, you kind of clear the same way. I mean, there's, like, the jungle Pokemon, but that's, not something you think about a whole lot.
I have one gripe with the jungle Pokemon.
Okay.
And that's the one reason why I liked the old like damage over time just from hitting things better. When the jungle Pokemon levels up, it does an animation and it stops damaging whatever camp you're on. So if I'm like doing Raptors, I kill the big one and it levels up, but I was counting on it finishing off like 2 of the small ones or something. Then it does this little animation and he's like, hey, I'm leveled up now. And I'm like, go finish the little Raptors, man.
Okay,
And,
dude, I've been noticing that too, not only on the level up, but like I've noticed that if you kill the jungle monster or like the thing you're hitting, your pet will just stop hitting the rest, which happens a lot on like when you're finishing off Raptors or Krugs, like, they'll all be like, 1 or 2 jungle hits away from dying, but like you finish one with an auto and then your pet just goes AFK.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, come on, just finish the camp. Like I don't want to have to auto 5 times.
you need better training for these pets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, get freak on it. Yeah, no. I mean, it's really interesting. I'm kind of curious how everything's gonna affect pro. Obviously, the biggest change it feels like for pro and what we saw in Champions Queue and what I've seen in a lot of games and people are talking about is obviously red side bot lane is really, really diveable now. So people are feeling like red side is like super unplayable for bot lane. Like obviously, as a blue side jungler, you can do a 3 camp clear on bot side and defend, but then you're there without your red buff. And then if you're there just defending this gank, but you can't actually make one happen and they just start clearing towards top side or wherever you're behind. So people are feeling like it's really hard to play jungle, from blue side and defend against this bot lane dive. And if you don't go there, then it's really easy to do these like level 3 wraparound ganks that junglers are doing really, really commonly because you can just walk in now. You don't have to like walk up and around that wall that used to be there. You just walk through the tri-brush. So like I'm kind of curious, do you guys think that it's going to be something that people are going to be able to like adapt to, or is it just like that's just the way that the map is and it's just going to be this big advantage for blue side?
I mean, I like people will adapt a little bit, but it's like there's no denying the fact that bottom side is just so much more wide open, and it's easier for mid laners to gank there too. It's not just junglers. The little wall that's by the river across from Dragon now, and breaking that hole in the blue wall means you can just run straight around Scuttle Crab Vision also. So like Scuttle Crab Vision to me greatly dropped in priority because mid laners and junglers can just take like an extra like 1 second, not even much time at all, and just go up around behind that. I will say I don't know if it's just because the camera angle too. But it does feel a little bit easier to gank red side than the blue side, even though it's supposed to be all the changes are supposed to be making the map more symmetrical and blue more similar to red. On the red side, you do come out a little bit, you have more room, it feels like, around the tower to be able to maneuver and gank that bottom side. I don't know if that's camera angle or if that was intentional.
I feel the same way.
Or what is kind of giving rise to that, but it's like you have super easy access to Gromp. You have like, it feels like you have more room around the tower to gank
Well, it feels
them.
like you get behind them more easily, whereas when you come through the tri-brush on blue, it's like you have to go
you're at
back.
the tower, basically.
Exactly. You have to go back behind past Krugs to actually get in and do like a full like wraparound gank, it feels like.
So even though it's like, oh, it's supposed to be more symmetrical, I'm like, not really.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to be. Part of me feels like teams are just, after 5 minutes, like when the grub spawn, like bot lanes are just going to lane mid, because I honestly don't see a huge incentive to just laning bot for the bot lane. The only thing in the game right now that's like, a forced mechanic for why the duo lane goes bot is because the 5 minute turret damage thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the mid and top turret take half damage until 5 minutes, but I feel like after that point, there's not much incentive to go bot, because if you're mid, you can control the grubs, which are like a 4 minute respawn, super fast, and then dragon as well. So I'm curious if teams are actually going to do that. Just say, what's the point of going bot anyway? Just have your mid go down there.
100%. Sometimes you have to like ping your support to come do it, but I've actually already supports are adapting to it, and I have supports in solo queue that are already like spam pinging, yo, I'm coming 5 minutes, I'm coming to grub. So at least the support, is making moves. Maybe it is a thing where they do a whole bottom lane swap, and especially in pro play, maybe you actually lane swap, depending on what mid laner you have. If they're a good side laner that could go down there, some champions used for mid lane can be more resistant to ganks than the duo lane down there. But either way, whether it's just support coming up to join your mid laner up there and have more presence for grub / dragon fights.
Grub duty.
Yeah, grub duty. Because the grubs initially, I was like, oh man, this is going to be great. everyone's so focused on them, I'm going to use it as bait, and I'm just going to get, a dragon or a Botside gank off. But the grubs actually just killing them, even if you don't consider the debuff that they give, they have really good experience and gold. It's 10 gold for every person on your team, plus 20 to the killer, plus 75 experience for each one, for every single one. It's actually like their rewards for themselves are already equivalent, if not better than some of the camps.
Yeah, I still don't have a super solid read on like how good the grubs are, because most of my games I've been trying to just prioritize them, and it seems like everyone else is. But at some point, I'm like, how much of it is placebo, right? Because if it's like everyone in the game has this opinion that's like, okay, these grubs are absolutely mandatory, I'm getting them or I'm dying trying, right? It's like, then whoever has more people go into this grub and like if you're killing the other team and getting grubs, it's really good, obviously. Like, but then again, killing the other team anywhere is really good.
Yeah.
So I've had some games where like I just can't get the grubs, and you let them get the grubs, and it doesn't really feel that bad, because it's kind of like a win more objective in a way, where like it helps you progress the game, it helps you kill their turrets, which I like. But if you're losing, anyway, it does actually nothing.
That's why I feel like the rewards for the grub are mostly in the golden experience that I'm getting, and I'm not valuing the debuff as much.
I think if you get 5 or 6 though, it's really impactful. The buff is nice, but it's not the end of the world if someone gets it. But like if someone gets 5 or 6, defending against split pushers as a top laner is really hard, because they don't even have to hit your tower to spawn the grubs.
Yeah.
Like melee teams just have to walk close, and it just spawns these extra minions. Which
is that how it works?
Yep. So it's like I didn't realize that at first, but like if you're playing, you're playing like a tank against Jax or whatever, and you're trying to defend this, and they have 6, it is really hard. Your towers just get whittled down by these extra 2 spawns on every single wave, right? So it gets pretty difficult to deal with. But like I do agree, if you over prioritize grubs at the expense of other things, then it can not be worth it, right? Because you have to get to the towers to get any value out of that. And it's going to be interesting, right? Because like people, I think, have a lot of different opinions on how to play around grubs. Some people are doing like full like swaps up or roaming support up and trying to play 3 or 4 for grubs. But then other teams are doing it where it's like, okay, we'll give up the first 3 and we'll dive your bot or zone you off bot and take a dragon and take plates and stuff like that, and then full commit to fighting the next ones and try to be like stronger, at that point. So it's going to kind of be interesting, because I'm not sure if we're going to see teams like always committing to fight for it, or if it's going to actually encourage more trading. But the weirdest part about it for me is that I felt like they added grubs as like this top lane objective to make top lane more relevant. And it's actually done the opposite, because it feels like bot lane is still by far the most important, even more important, it feels like, than last season, because guess what? Having 2 people come to an objective is that much better than having 1, right? So it's like you play around your bot to get them ahead so they can move to grub, so they can move to dragon. And top lane just feels like even more isolated than ever before.
For me right now, I feel like top lane, it actually didn't do the opposite. I do feel like it was good for them. I've had some top laners that even have gone down. They're winning their lane so hard, they push up and they take one of them for me. So then I'm able to do, a gank bottom or something like that also. It's really interesting. I think there's going to be no default plan. It depends on your draft so much, because these buffs are so different that it really depends on how well your team comp can actually use them.
Yeah.
And what are your timings for fighting, to depend on what is the actual value of this versus dragon stacking or something like that for your team comp. So that's why I really like the differences in the design of the objective, because I don't think it'll be a default thing where, universally I always go for it or something.
Yeah, I've seen one strat. I've seen a couple people do it against me, which I think is actually really good if you're not winning. It's like you don't clear the grubs, you just take 2 of them and then you leave, because then if they didn't know you did it, like you don't get the notification until all of them are dead,
and they can't get 5 now.
Yeah, exactly, and then they can't start spawning the minions. So I think that kind of thing could be an option as well. I don't know, we're gonna have to see how impactful they end up being.
Yeah, Baron is also going to be kind of interesting, because I've heard, again, like a lot of different takes on it. Like Baron obviously seems harder to take in general, especially because I just think people are playing way more lethality marksman and like lower DPS comps in general. I'm seeing like more assassins and things
Baron
like that.
Baron
has more
health. It's just tanky.
Exactly. So it's like Baron takes are slower in general. And I'm kind of wondering if in pro, this is actually going to slow down the late game a lot. It's like if people aren't willing to actually start Baron because it takes them longer to do, are we just going to see like way more like Dragon Soul and Elder games and stuff like that? Because it felt like towards the end of last season, you know, when you're in Worlds and whatnot, so many of the teams, if they got any sort of advantage, like there's at such high DPS comps, they just kind of go to Baron, start it, and look to turn, right? And it feels like that is maybe, you know, more risky now potentially if you have a really slow Baron take.
Yeah, it does feel super hard to kill, but again, it could be because of champions. Because like, you know, I haven't been seeing a whole lot of Kai'Sa, and like the Kai'Sa Azir comps are the ones that like you blink and Baron's gone.
We're playing like Jhin, Ashe, Lucian, like all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I actually really like when Baron's not paper. Like those games, those games feel so bad. It's just like, oops, it's 20 minutes and I went to my bottom side for one camp and they got Baron. My bad.
Yeah.
So I think it will hopefully open up more strats. Like in a way, it might even bait people into like better macro, because usually what you want to do, like even when Baron is killable, is like rather than just go, like literally you can see this in so many LCS games where like when teams macro is not too clean, they'll just like pink ward the river and just sit on Baron, or like, you know, keep starting it and peeling off. But it's way better to like actually push their lanes, control their whole jungle. That way, and instead of them just like, you know, being over the wall ready to smite it, they have to walk through their whole jungle. It's all dark. You can jump them at any angle. So hopefully that'll help teams see that more than just like tunneling on the Baron itself.
I guess the other side of it is, I will say, I don't even know what you call it, but like basically like the hallway Baron, you know what I'm talking about? How it has like that long line. That I feel like is really scary to approach when the other team might be doing it, because you have like no vision into the pit, and it's so easy. Like I was playing some Hex Flash supports and stuff like that. Just stand behind that wall, and if they're approaching to try to contest the Baron at all, like you can just Hex Flash over the wall and engage and whatnot. So like turns from that seem really, really strong. So it's going to be interesting, especially that one feels like maybe kind of the exception, because the other ones are like, there's one that's just like fully open. There's one with like the little rock in the middle.
Yeah,
and then there's one that has like the hallway or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing with the map that I noticed is there's like a lot less bushes between mid and like Dragon / Baron, because for the longest time that has been like the spot to control and fight. Like you're at such an advantage if you get to the objective first. You have like a pink in the line bush, you have a pink in the pixel, because you have to like walk through so many bushes. But now like between mid and Dragon, there's like, you know, much less brush. So I feel like it's going to be maybe easier to contest because you don't have to worry about like walking in blind so much, be it like such a vision disadvantage.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, might lead to more fights.
It's going to be really interesting because I think, you know, vision is one of the more, it's really obvious when you're playing the game, but it's much more subtle when you're watching the game, right? Because when you're playing the game and you just feel strangled out, like I can't see anything, I don't feel like I can go there, like that's obvious. But when you're watching pro games, it's kind of like sometimes less obvious. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, if teams are actually having kind of like varied strategies on where they think you should be playing around, like what areas you should be trying to control, like what areas are most important and stuff. Because the teams that kind of like figure it out, so to speak, first are probably going to get like a pretty huge advantage. Because as you say, like a lot of these most common areas or strategies that you did contest and play around, it doesn't really work in the same way anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the rock wall opposite of the pits, both Dragon and Baron, with the new banana brush on it. I feel like the new banana brush is mandatory to have vision in. It's because it's so close. Like people can hit abilities over the rock wall, like the thin rock wall. Like if you don't have vision in that one, then it is super dangerous to go for either of them. I am pretty frustrated by the mid lane changes. I think that one, they were very successful in their goal in making it harder to gank, because it is so much harder now. For mid lane, it used to be way more difficult. Like if you didn't ward perfectly in the pixel brush, junglers, we could sneak around and go up the ramp. Now, if you just ward in the line brush closer on that side, there's no way for a jungler to sneak in. And then the opposite side,
To walk through the tower.
The pathway comes through the tower now.
Yeah, what is that?
And then they also moved the line brush of the river back. So I was like, mid lane is like, it's like a airport runway now. There's
If it's like an Azir or anything with a dash, it's like ungankable.
I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, I've been feeling that one too. Like you try to flank mid and you're just like, wait, their tower is in the path. Like I can't. Yeah. It is going to be weird. I don't know. I mean, I guess laners will like that, you know, not getting ganked as much. It definitely feels better laning when your lane isn't just like Hope I get more ganks than he does.
Yeah.
No big deal.
I'm sure all of the laners, at least top and mid lane, have been.
Unless you're in a really bad matchup, then you want the junglers there.
Yeah, I've definitely had some top laners crying, even more. But yeah, I definitely think they were successful in like their goal. Those were their stated goals for the changes. So it's going to be interesting to see the evolution that people take towards that. For me right now, I'm like, oh my God, Graves and Lilia, like these super farm heavy junglers are doing so well right now. Because of these things, that makes it harder for like traditional ganking junglers as well. Plus the fact that right now there's the games are actually, it's pretty easy to come back and stall and stuff. So things that also farm and scale seem to be doing pretty well despite there being so much burst damage in the game, and possibility there. It's actually the data right now shows a decent amount of like being able to counter snowballs. Because there is so much burst damage, like you can get bounties pretty successfully with it as well. So I'm very excited to get pro play on this patch. But
Have you still been playing Volibear?
yeah, I still am sticking with it,
Really?
and I'm rank like 900 something right now. It's like I've just I adapted it to, instead of ganking lanes so much, I'm just fighting the enemy jungler so much. And so I make them also not farm as much, and kind of like drag them down with me. And then I have Volibear ultimate to force tower dives, so I don't have to do traditional ganks. I just tower dive people. So
Yeah, I'm a big volley enjoyer, but like I don't know, looking at stats and playing him, like
he's 47% win rate right now. He's not good.
Oh, trash. I don't know. Like, what are you building on him? I like
Titanic Rush, even though they nerfed it.
Titanic
Yeah,
Rush,
even though they nerfed it, Titanic is so much damage because you have 2 auto attack resets, and your passive stacks quicker with it as well, because then you have your Titanic auto attack reset to stack your passive, and then you're like, I'm tanky enough where I can survive some of the burst that people are dishing out right now, and build mostly tank after that. But hopefully, I know they're nerfing Storm Surge. I already saw the release. Storm Surge is getting a nerf, so they're targeting some of the burst damage out there. I think lethality, which was not on the 14.2 changes, might need to get looked at again. They kind of hot fixed a little bit collector, but since they changed lethality to just equal 1 armor penetration and not be 0.6 up to a full armor penetration scaling based on your level,
It's so strong early.
it's really strong early.
wait, they changed that?
Yeah,
I missed that.
Yeah. That was one of the big things I was looking at, because they took down the lethality like 2 on most items, but it's still way better early. And so especially some of the like Graves and Lucian builds where you have Cyclo Sword into Collector, or Graves if you do Ghost Blade into Collector, like it's so much lethality early. And then
Some of the champions that can build Sundered Sky and stuff as well. I think that's pretty strong in top lane on some champs.
a lot of people too are doing the energized synergies with Cyclo Sword and Storm Razor, and then building into Collector, and then going IE and like getting all these synergies of energizes plus lethality plus crit.
Dude.
And
With Trinity Force as well, like I'm so glad they hotfixed it, but like AD LeBlanc day 1 was the worst thing to play against. Like the charge is getting like faster from dashes, so she's like WR auto attack your carry for like 1.2k damage.
Yep.
Half their health is gone, and then jumps back. I'm like, wow, that was some gameplay. Like there's a lot I could do there.
it was like 80% of Champs Q games would have a LeBlanc ban or a LeBlanc player playing that the quadruple energized build.
I mean, for early and pro too, it's just getting chain banned, right? It's basically back to, I feel like, pre-nerf LeBlanc with Shiv and all that, right? Like the Shiv rush stuff. Like it feels like just as bad as that.
Dude,
There's
that
some
champion
crazy
should
stuff,
not
man.
be able to like be centered around auto attacks. Like it's so wild.
And they agree. So I know 14.2, that was one of the things they listed, were a whole bunch of like killing AD LeBlanc.
yeah.
The killing AD LeBlanc part 3 or something.
part-
Like,
Dude, like just
Well, they undid the
take away
previous
her
one that
auto
they-
attack. Like she doesn't need to auto attack.
Yeah.
It's fine.
she gets Karthus Q now.
Sure.
I love following Bob Chin though, because he's the one who started all of it.
Yeah.
Got like the most famous doing it, and he just will tweet out these like pictures of match histories without showing anything except like the victory screen or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, I figured something else out. And I'm like, oh no, not another one coming. I feel like though one of the most annoying things you were mentioning supports is that double support bottom lane, because that's in solo queue a bunch. Thankfully in solo queue, not a lot of people are doing the 2-1-2 stuff. The double top lane. I know they were doing double jungle and top laner being 2 top laners in China, in a decent amount of, or at least in some of the high low solo queue games. But like even just in bottom lane, when you're playing like the Seraphine Senna and they both have what's it called, the Sheen support item, Blood Song.
Dude, that item is nuts.
It's insane.
It's Triforce Junior. Like it is really strong.
Oh.
I don't know the math on like the gold efficiency, but it's like
It's really high when you get full cash
the
out.
proc is almost Trinity Force plus like a stronger press the attack on just a Sheen proc. So I've seen support Lucians in my game who get like who go Blood Song, Kraken Slayer. I'm like, that is not a support, and then they're still one-shotting people. I'm like, that seems good.
Gumayushi did it in LCK. I think it was yesterday or whenever it was. But like he bought the support item on Lucian, right? Like as AD, but they just did double support items. I've been seeing it with all kinds of stuff. I was even seeing people doing like Ezreal as like ADC, and they were doing like tier start into support item, and then basically around the time that they can fully stack their Muramana, they also complete their support item. And so they're basically at like 13, 14 minutes, essentially on like Triforce plus Muramana.
Yeah.
Like
That
it's
sounds
not as
insane.
good as Triforce, but you're on two core with crazy synergies for your kit when a standard AD hits their first item, right? So then it's like, then you just start fighting, because as we know, like Ezreal gets insane at that point in the game. So like there's a lot of strategies. Like people are talking a lot about Senna. Senna is the obvious one, as like you already played this as a support. Now you just get this like AD item that's really good. It's better than what you could do before. But there's a lot of different stuff that I've been seeing people experiment, and it's super easy because one person just farms all the melees, the other person farms all the range. You don't actually hit that like gold debuff where you're getting less gold from the minions.
Yeah,
You know why?
Did they change that?
You know why? It's because when you use it on minions and you execute, it counts on your scoreboard for CS, but it doesn't
count.
It doesn't count for the penalty thing.
Yeah.
So people are just turbo abusing that, and you're getting so much money still. And as long as you have like basic communication, even in solo queue, people are like, "I've got the penalty now. Now you farm more," and it's so. I sound like I have turbo jungle like envy right now because I've stuck with this stupid pet, and the supports are getting these tricked out like multifaceted support.
Where's my
items.
pet's Trinity Force?
But if I could buy a support item instead, I would for sure do that 100% of games.
Start laning with your top laner, just show up.
Yeah, even if they nerf the Blood Song, the crown one, the shield,
Celestial Blessing or something like that.
that thing to me seems like next up to be super OP. I feel like if they when they nerf the
Celestial
Blood
Opposition,
Song,
excuse me.
I feel like that people will just shift over to that one,
Yep.
and majority of people will go that, because there's so many cases. Even if you're a backline support, having the crown for defense when people dive on you is huge. If you're initiation support, guess what? You're going in, you get to use the slow that comes after the damage reduction also. I feel like that one is going to be right up there as well. The support itemization to me is one of the craziest things right now. It's definitely super strong.
Yeah, I will say I really enjoy the flexibility in itemization. Even though like largely on most champions, I'm loading them up. I'm like, what am I gonna do different? And I build the same thing I built last time. But it's like, I don't feel.
But nobody told you to.
Exactly.
So it's okay.
Well, and I don't feel like locked into having to rush like, oh, I need this mythic item and this one fits best. It's like, if the best thing for me to get is like, some, I don't know, like some arm pen earlier.
I rushed the Dead Man's Plate first item on Volibear.
There you go, right?
It
Like-
wasn't that great, but
I
I
also
was
tried
able to
that.
do it.
But it's like, sometimes there's situations where that stuff makes sense, right? And it's like you're not like locked into having to get this mythic. So I do enjoy that more. And I enjoy feeling like I'm more kind of like build flexible in that way.
Yeah, I love the removing mythics.
There's one of my favorite things though has been playing Nasus with Sundered Sky Triforce, and like your Q does so much damage. It is actually crazy how much burst you can do. I've been seeing people do some pretty cooked builds with that because it gives you the guaranteed crit, plus it's a certain amount of like base AD added on it, and then you also get the heal like for missing health plus a percentage of your AD. So it's like pretty crazy. I see a lot of Lee Sins building Sundered Sky and stuff as well. But there's some pretty interesting builds. I was watching Bwipo playing Udyr top last night with like Triforce Titanic, and then he was going into lethality, and he was like in 0.5 seconds 100 to 0ing people in a stun, right? Like he would do like I don't know, I don't play Udyr, but it's like the empowered Q, like the ultimate Q, you know, you do double Q or whatever. And then he would stun, double Q, like auto Titanic or whatever, and they would die from full.
I don't
Sounds about right.
I know
It
how
was
many
like-
games he did that.
and they're just like, you're like, what?
I don't know how many games he did that, but I was watching him do that build too. Titanic, Trinity Force, Sundered Sky, and he had a tank item in there as well. I think that.
There's like Udyr seems really strong right now, and it feels like you could practically build anything on that champion. Like I've seen full tank Udyrs do well. I've seen lethality Udyrs do well. I've seen some like AP, Leandry's stuff because Leandry doesn't even have mana anymore. A lot of people are rushing that in different ways.
And I'm even in Bwipo's AD Tiger Udyr build, you're able to buy and get the benefits of having a Dark Seal stacking up and giving you super big benefits of AP also. So like you get to splash everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if so one of the biggest things to me with the item change is like before when we had mythics, there were some items that like you probably wanted but you couldn't get because they were mythics and like you needed some other mythic or whatnot. And so like Rocket Belt's actually one of the ones to me that seems like it might be kind of crazy since on so many champs. Yeah, I mean it's super cheap. It's basically like the same thing as a Gale Force, right? It's like, it's a mobility item. And before it was kind of the same thing, but it locked you into a mythic.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't get other stuff. So I've been playing like Elise and just getting a Rocket Belt. I've been playing like Gragas with a Rocket Belt, and it feels kind of nuts because like the stats on it are good, and the effects, and it's super cheap, like you said. So I think that'll be one to look for.
That's like, especially for some of the champions that can actually use like double mythics. Like I was playing some Gwen, and I had some games where I was going. Why am I spacing out on the sustain item name?
Riftmaker?
Riftmaker Rocket Belt and stuff,
Yeah.
right? And it's like you can do some things where it's like you can do some like combinations of things that used to be mythics. Or
Oh, I mean
whatever and
the Lilia build right now. It's legit like you're playing arena with the mythic augment.
Oh,
It's
man.
like you go Leandry,
Leandry's in the
Riftmaker,
Riftmaker.
Jack Show,
stuff. Yeah,
and like
yeah.
I don't know,
you
you
just stack mythic items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like there's definitely some interesting stuff there where it's like you have combinations of items that you couldn't have before. Have you guys seen anyone do well with Crypt Bloom, by the way? I literally never see anyone buy it, and I'm like, I don't really know who's supposed to buy this.
I saw a couple of people buy it. They didn't do well because of it. they did
buy it.
They were already doing well, and they had a storm surge in their village. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's-
I think the storm surge is doing the carrying, but then you get to see the explosion of a storm surge, and when they kill someone, you get the Crypt Bloom explosion. And they're
The
just
heal
like,
from the Crypt Bloom is so small. Like it feels really insignificant to me.
Yeah.
The only thing I've got it for is like on Elise when I don't have enough money for Void Staff, because it's basically like a cheaper Void Staff that gives you haste and a little bit less magic pen. So if they're not Giga Tanks, maybe it's just better. And I think the heal proc is like so weak that you don't even consider it.
yeah.
Yeah, like I guess maybe I'm thinking about it wrong then, right? Because like I read the like active or the proc or whatever, and I'm like, okay, when would I want this, right? And I was like, well, maybe if I have like 4 melee on my team or something like that, everyone's stacked up for the heal. But maybe it should just be like Void Staff Junior, like you're talking about.
Yeah, like I want more haste instead of the slight more pen and AP, and I didn't get enough for my Void Staff because I think it's like 100 or 200 cheaper, something like that.
Yeah. And team fights, like, sometimes a little splash heal here and there is
Dude, I mean,
gonna save someone.
one thing that's been kind of tough with the items is like they took out all those tooltips that tell you what your items are doing.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know what my items are doing half the time.
Oh yeah, how much damage and stuff? I actually
Yeah.
hate that.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was an accident or intentional.
They did comment on it. It was like they commented the reasoning, and it was intentional. I don't think the degree to which they did it maybe was intentional, but they had a long post talking about it. And the original idea was like, oh, there's going to be too much of everybody, looking up exact stats and making their decisions this way. They wanted more people to make decisions. Some decisions should be left on what feels better. And not always, oh, well, let me just crunch the numbers on, this thing.
Dude, but like
I
my,
like
my
seeing
mini
some
game,
of them,
I
yeah.
like my mini game. If
I'm
I'm losing the
just-
game, I want to see
yeah.
how much damage my items do.
Yeah, well, I think it's really fun, but it also is really informative. Like when I was on playtest years and years and years ago, like I suggested for the devs to start stat tracking on some of the things. Like they had it on some things, but they didn't have it on most things. And it's like that was one of the changes that I was suggesting, and they started doing it on like everything, which I loved because it can be really hard to tell the effect of an item, like if it's actually really doing much for you or if it's not. But should we move on to power rankings?
Yes.
Let's get it.
Okay, we got an 8-team league now, which is going to be a bit of a change. So 2 teams exited. Shall we start top to bottom and just kind of talk through a bit of the teams, talk through a bit of the rosters?
Okay. I think the top is not only unanimous for us, but unanimous for every player that I've talked to also.
Yeah.
Yep.
And everyone, and some fans and stuff, like during streams or whatever, are like, "Oh, do you think Cloud9's gonna have the super team problem, where they're gonna crash and burn, and there's gonna be too many egos, and there's too many players that want to carry. There's too many good players." My answer to that is no, and everybody that I've talked to as well with having scrims against them has just been insane. I feel like also about the playing together and synergies. Vulcan was already played with these guys.
He already
Vulcan
played with
was already
JoJo,
with
and
them.
he already played with Cloud9.
Exactly. So that's not a problem reintegrating him. And so then really the only piece is
JoJo.
oh, will JoJo work? How well will he work with Blabber? Mid jungle synergy is always a question. And watching them duoing in Champions Queue has been power duo.
Yeah, they've
I
been
would
doing a
say.
lot.
So yeah, I think they're fine.
Yeah, I think the top 2 for all of us was C9 Energy, and that's the only choice I think coming into this split because a lot of these teams have had huge makeovers with their roster like we see traditionally. But C9 Energy, they were the top 2 teams at the end of summer. They've for the most part kept their rosters, at least the core. So definitely makes sense. I think that do we all have the same 3 and 4 with TL?
Pretty much. We're very
It looks like
similar to
everybody
top.
has
Top 4, yep.
We've got all top 4 the same. Cloud9,
You guys
Energy,
copied my homework.
Team Liquid, FlyQuest. I
You're
said mine
supposed-
in first.
You're supposed to change it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those teams are a little bit of wild cards in a way.
Yeah.
You don't really know how they're going to do until you see it. But TL, they've got a pretty strong core, and then Impact's back on the team, which I don't know. I'm a huge Impact fan. I've played with them.
Yeah.
One of my best teammates I've ever worked with. Just super good for the culture. Last split was kind of an anomaly for him. It was the first time he wasn't just making whatever team he was on a top team. Honest, something happened to FlyQuest last split.
And he was still
FlyQuest,
doing pretty
yeah.
well individually too. But yeah, something definitely happened to FlyQuest overall.
That's
as a
what I was going
team.
to say is I feel like he was the one person that people were still people were like, man, FlyQuest is ass, but Impact's still good though. It was always kind of people were kind of not blaming him for that. But for those who don't know, so the C9 roster is going to be Fudge, Blabber, JoJo, Berserker, and Vulcan. And we can talk through it a bit more. Mithy obviously is the head coach. This is the first time there's ever been 3 MVPs on a team in LCS. So that's a first. JoJo won MVP, Blabber won MVP, Berserker won MVP as well. So the team is obviously ridiculously stacked. This is the team that also, I think, a lot of people, when M&S wasn't doing as well last year, C9 fans started saying, we need JoJo, And I didn't really
Jack was
think
okay.
I didn't really think it was going to happen or anything.
Say less.
But the rumors are it's one of the biggest contracts ever, or at least currently, one of the biggest contracts in the West, if not the biggest contract in the West.
Yeah, definitely not ever, but
No. Yeah. But I guess I should say now, because obviously the things have changed. But so they obviously really, really wanted to get him. And I mean, this team, the expectations are going to be, I think, ridiculously high, right? I talked to all the coaches, to a lot of the players, and a lot of people were saying, yeah, you're gonna be surprised in the standings. This team could be really bad. We think this team might jump up way above your expectations. And I'm like, oh, what? Does that include Cloud9? Well, not really, Cloud9's really good.
they'll be where you think they're gonna be.
So basically everyone I talked to had Cloud9 on a tier of their own, and then felt like everyone else was catchable, But it does mean that the expectations are insane. I feel like they have to not only win, if they don't stomp the league, everyone's going to be kind of disappointed. Like everyone is thinking this is like the NA team that could, win it all, that could go international and like really like beat the top teams. And I feel like the expectations are at that level.
Yeah, which is really funny because JoJo is a pretty volatile player. Blabber can be a pretty volatile player, though in the LCS he's usually super consistent. And then the question about bringing Vulcan and what happened in FlyQuest, but that is still, I mean, everyone, myself included, kind of defaulted to like, he'll be fine. He's back with all these players that he's played with before, and we kind of brush off
and so far it was
what
like
happened
a
in
blip on the radar,
FlyQuest. Yeah,
he had
exactly.
a lot of good years.
Yeah, but like there could be something that like emerges in the future, maybe with them. But yeah, I'm on the side too with Cloud9 being so highly rated. It's funny that they have the 3 MVPs and then their biggest competitor and the team that beat them last year, Energy, have no MVPs. And the whole thing with this team was that they didn't get any votes. They got no all pro votes. They got no nothing. I mean, they got votes.
But they do have a win against G2 at Worlds.
But they do have
True.
They got that.
The other thing is, though, I'm really scared, and I wanted to even put in my power rankings, like a parentheses by my like Energy. I have to put them up at number 2, but with the caveat that I feel like are for sure going to start slow, because I know these players, because they had such a long season and going all the way through Worlds and everything, they really wanted to take time off so they don't get burnt out. And so they did that. And so you're coming into one of the season changes that have the most changes that we have had in years after being what should be the coldest team taking this long break. And so I feel like there's for sure going to be a slow start here. And I can definitely see all of us now, since we all put the same, getting flamed for having Energy rank 2 if they explode in some of their early games. But it would feel so wrong not putting them that high ranked after they did so well last year, overcame so many expectations, and then now adding Huhi, reuniting with FBI does seem, like the change that they did make should actually, in the end, in the long run, be positive.
Yeah, that's actually a good point where I think Energy was such an easy team to like root for because of all their stories. It was players who'd been in the league for a while who weren't necessarily like super dominant. They weren't bad by any means, but like no one was coming into the split being like, yeah, Energy's for sure winning this. But the question for me is going to be like that. I feel like that hunger drove them, right? Like they all never had a championship win for the most part. But now that they've got it, how can they keep going, right? It's like sometimes that fire, that hunger that you had that propelled you to the top. Once you've achieved it, it's easy to relax a little bit. So gonna have to see how they can deal with it. And then sometimes too, like once you've had that success, they beat G2 at Worlds, like they're probably feeling pretty good. If things start going wrong, if they have Huhi coming in instead of Ignar, that's definitely going to be like a big dynamic change. Maybe if things don't go great right away, how are they going to be able to handle that?
Yeah, sometimes it can be a bad thing to lose the underdog status and the underdog mentality, because you feel like, oh, everyone's against us, and it makes you closer together, and like your team is all unified and everybody's on the same page. But heavy lies the crown. If you're at the top, then you're more worried about falling down and like, we shouldn't be losing to X team or whatever. Do the egos start to take over now that they've finally surpassed and climbed their way to the top?
Yeah, I mean, talking to ThinkCard, one of the things that he said, and he talked a lot about like integrating Huhi into the team, because Energy had a really defined way on like how they wanted to play the game, and everyone was on the same page by the end of last year, and in how they were going to shot call and how everyone fit in. And Ignar in game was like a much quieter player, whereas Huhi's coming from GG, where it's like, even other players are telling like, he's telling us like we're all idiots, and like he makes us review after game, and like he's driving like the whole game for his team. So he had like a really clear way how he wanted to play too. So I do think there's going to be potentially some growing pains and like integrating him in, like who's actually going to be the one driving the bus, so to speak, who's going to be the one actually making the shot calls, and like which like kind of style or which opinion are you going to actually be listening to. I also know that he was saying one of the things is that they were feeling like a ton of pressure because expectations are so high for this team, right? Like no one ever expected anything from them. So anything they did was like, oh, wow, good for you, Energy. But now it's like you won LCS and you did the best out of any Western team at Worlds, right? Like they beat G2. So the expectations, I think, are like baseline. You make it back to finals, right? Like they have to be in competition for a title. And so, he did say that the team was like feeling the pressure and I think like being really harsh on themselves in scrims and stuff, because it's like if it's not clicking immediately, I think the expectations for themselves have even changed, right? Which is one of those hard things. But it's like you can't. I think you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to be able to make things work, because they have just shown too much now to just like overlook this team.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that it can be kind of hard to track, but I talked to Palafox about this. I was just like in passing, was like, yo, what's the power ranking? Who's the best? He's like, I mean, it's kind of what you'd expect, but he said, just look at who's playing solo queue. Like those are always going to be the best players, which I thought was really interesting because I remember talking to Jack back in like.
So is Ole the best player in the league?
Could be. You don't know.
Number one in Korea.
Could be. I mean, I think it's more about like quantity.
Yeah.
Because coming into like 2020 with C9, I remember Jack, I was talking to him about it stuff, and he just said, yeah, we just looked at who played the most solo queue, and we just got all those players. And they did really well. And so that's definitely like the theory I always have in the back of my mind. It's just like, it's rare you see a team win and their players are like, really just not grinding. It's almost always the team that's like playing too much that does the best. So
hard work pays off.
Yeah, for sure. I think I don't know every pro player's solo queue account, so it's hard to like track exactly like who's playing how much, but definitely something to keep an eye on.
I can't, especially because there was a shift in Cloud9 recently where they're all streaming way more, but also Fudge was in Champions Queue spamming it a whole bunch, which he never used to play a bunch in Champions Queue. So it's pretty, I feel like there has been a push, especially with Cloud9 this year, to get them all playing a lot more Champions Queue, streaming a lot more, grinding a lot more. I know that one of the big reasons, they wanted JoJo, not only because he already had performed so well in LCS, but also because immediately, like after they were out, he was grinding away. He went and climbed over to Korea, came back, still spamming a whole bunch. He's definitely motivated as well.
So before we move on to number 3, for these top 2 teams, what do you think the like potential pitfalls are? I feel like people are more negative on Fudge than they used to be. Do you think it's a concern that like Blabber has always in LCS played like, people talk about him as like coin flip, but like that's, I feel like so outdated now for LCS.
No,
like he's super conservative. He prioritizes farm. He gets level leads, and then he kind of takes over games. And it's like JoJo is the most aggressive, most lane focused mid laner, and those are somewhat at odds with each other. It's like if you want your mid laner to be going insane and getting the most, your jungler kind of needs to play like around them a bit more instead of like prioritizing their own farm. Like, do you think that's a potential pitfall? Are you worried about Fudge? Like, what do you think for these?
I'm not really worried about C9 at all. I think that one thing definitely to keep in mind with like power rankings and start of split is like it's super normal for like week 1, week 2 results to be super like non-indicative of anything, because I've seen so many splits where like spring split last year, Golden Guardians started like 0-4 or whatnot, and then got to the finals. And so I think that's kind of whatever. But as far as Blabber goes, I've always heard that too. Like he's such a coin flip player, and I think part of that is just because the mistakes he makes usually in game are like such weird mistakes to make. Like, the Nidalee killing himself for Crab. I remember like a Maokai game where he just like let himself get solo killed by a Scion passive in the beginning of the game. So like he'll make these like really loud mistakes that like, it's easy to look at that and be like, wow, that was a really obvious thing that goes wrong. But like the stuff he does well is also kind of like under the radar. Cause I've played a lot of League, and even when I was playing against him, I was just like, wow, Blabber's like for sure the best player I played against, because, jungling, so much of it is like mind games and stuff. So you have like, the expectation, like what's their jungler doing? And they either match your expectation or like, are above or below it. Yeah, exactly. And Blabber he's always hard to predict what he's going to do, but he was always doing something like good. So I'm not worried about him. I think fans, for whatever reason, like to hate on him for some reason. But no, he's always good.
Do you get like beyond just like ego stuff and whatever for Energy? Is there any like actual worries that you have about them being able to match up?
For Energy's side, I mean, they still, you still should probably have the concerns of that. Like you mentioned, like coin flip for Blabber, but Energy are a team that have really high.
They were way
Let's
more
say
coin flip in the regular season.
let's call it risk tolerance.
They were 9-9 in the regular season. Chain lost to our bottom teams.
And it's not to me too. I don't even look.
Immortals is their father.
I don't look at the end of the game. You know who won, who lost, but like how
The results are not indicative of performance.
how they played the game, not results-based analysis, but actually how they played it. And even within the games, there'll be multiple points within these games where they have very high tolerance for risky plays. And so they go for them. And so they can have 2, 3 even game losing plays in the same game and then still have the tolerance for risk and make some crazy comeback ones. A lot of those even ending up 9-9. A lot of those were losing games that they then were able to come back in super late, make a pick on somebody, run to the end of the nexus, you know, type of really exciting play. So this to me still I would put as very, very high volatility as a team. I think that they actually did get a lot better with all the international experience, though, talking to Contracts and Palafox a whole bunch. I think Contracts feels more solidified in his view of the game now. And so maybe there will be less of those super high risky plays for them. They're still definitely going to be there. He still definitely, you know, wants to play on the edge and wants to make the most optimal play for the team at the time. And sometimes that's going to be a super aggressive play. And so I don't think that's going to leave Energy. I think that would definitely, like I said, I feel like this is going to be the ranking that we could most easily get flamed for when they have some crazy, you know, loss to Immortals again. Or
And a lot of other teams seem to think that they're going to be bad this year.
From the beginning. Also because they took this long break.
Yeah.
There should be the coldest team to start.
I could see that. I think the only other thing I would add to that is that I think the changes we mentioned with the map, like, you know, ideally making it so jungle can't interfere with the lanes as much early, might hurt Energy because Contracts and Energy as a team were like, he had some of the best early ganks of any team. Like Energy's early game, I think, was in large part due to just like Contracts and how they play around his ganks, because a lot of their advantage would come from that. And, you know, obviously there's still going to be gank options, but if there's less of them, if it's harder to pull off, then maybe that makes it a bit harder for them to get going.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right, number 3, we have TL. Head coach is now Spawn, who was the academy coach for a long time, former caster and everything, someone that we know really well. And the TL roster is Impact, Umti, APA, Yon, and Core JJ. So obviously the changes are, you know, on that top side. They have kind of their bottom 3 are the same. Yeah. But it's going to be really interesting. You know, Impact, I think a lot of people are really excited about him getting picked up for TL, which is probably largely why a lot of us have them high up in the rankings. And Umti, I've heard a lot of good stuff about as far as how he's performing in scrims. But like my big question with this team is, like, are APA and Yon going to be able to step up and be the like primary carry and primary win condition for the team? Because it feels like they are going to have to be in like a, you know, kind of a more supportive style that we're expecting, I think, from Umti and Impact.
My most recent data is them playing Champions Queue, APA and Umti duoing a whole bunch. And one of the changes I like the most for Team Liquid is actually that, and a lot of people didn't like how they went full into Korea mode last year, but one of the changes they made, even though they did import Koreans and got Umti and Impact to replace, they both speak English really well. And so it's not going to be like isolating for APA, because already hearing their comms are really, like, Umti's also really funny. And so
Umti is incredible in English. Like, he's fully fluent.
They're bonding already. So like their mid jungle synergy is going to be really strong this year, I feel like, already. And then having Impact as an in-game leader as well. I just feel like those shifts for Team Liquid are going to be so positive for them. I was considering putting FlyQuest with having them importing, you know, Inspired back in the return of Whipple and stuff. I was considering for a while. I had them above Team Liquid, but watching the Champions Queue duo from them for like 5 nights in a row, they were really, really good every single time. And then talking to players from the scrims, the majority of the players were all like, oh yeah, Team Liquid definitely are going to finish way higher than.
Teal does always have crazy high scrim bucks though. Like in spring when they were 8th, everyone told me they were stomping scrims, all split long.
Yeah.
But I will say, partly why I believe more this time than I did in spring was in spring, they're apparently amazing in scrims, didn't do very well. In summer, they were apparently amazing in scrims, but I actually saw improvement on stage. I thought the Jan got way better from spring to summer. And I feel like all the work that they're putting in, like hopefully will be, paying off and starting to show. So I'm like a little bit more believing in that. But yeah, a lot of people were telling me that they were absolutely stomping scrims. And I talked to Spawn a lot about their team. He's kind of excited because he had coached APA and Jan before in academy and stuff. So kind of like reuniting with them. And he also told me that they literally got their first choice in every role, like for when they were looking and actually scouting and pick people up, like they really wanted Impact, they really wanted MT. So apparently they're like,
would they say if they didn't though? They're like, yeah, we got all of our first choice.
A lot of coaches actually did tell me.
Wasn't too sick on our jungler, but
a lot of coaches straight up told me they're like, well, the thing is, we wanted this person. We couldn't come to an agreement. This person wasn't sure, and then we had 2 days left before we had to sign.
I was gonna say I talked to some that were like embarrassed when they were telling me.
So some coaches are surprisingly honest. You're like, should you be saying that? Okay. But no, I mean they seem like really excited about their team and like the way that they wanted to kind of build the team. One of the things that Spawn talked a lot about is that both Core and Umti learned the game from Edgar, who's like I think the current now bro coach, like Fred at Brion, like okay bro from LCK, and Spawn really respects like him as a coach and likes that he like super focuses on like league fundamentals. So he feels like it's really advantageous that both Core and Umti basically like see the game the same way because they kind of like learned the game from the same coach. And it's like similar, I guess, to how Spawn sees the game. So he thinks that is really going to like help their team kind of like be on the same page. The other thing that he really emphasized is that he felt like the difference between Pyosik and Umti is the way that like Pyosik won the game was like playing for Pyosik. And he thinks that the way that Umti wins games is the opposite of like playing for his team. And that like he is really happy to like sacrifice for his lanes and stuff.
Man plays Sconner, so
exactly. Like he's kind of like the inverse style. I guess my concern about that sort of style jungler though, is kind of like what you were saying with contracts is that it's like if you want to play heavy for your lanes and on the new map, it feels like way harder to do that, right?
heavy
like
for bottom lane.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you
definitely
can.
Still playable.
Well, if you're blue side, you can dive Bob, but
yeah, for me, this team, I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on APA because there was a lot of talk about him last year. Obviously, like he came into the team up from Challenger. He didn't really play in LCS before, and he had a fairly solid debut. But it still left a lot of like questions unanswered because in a lot of their games where he did well, it was like playing Ziggs or Tristana champs that's like, I'm not going to say they're like super easy, but like maybe they're hard to punish compared to other stuff. And then with Team Liquid's Worlds runs, obviously like, there was the drama around Summit and Pyosik like not really saying good things about him.
Basically blaming him.
Yeah, like blaming him, and it's like, it's his first time at Worlds, and he's on a team that like legit doesn't communicate with him. Like that's so hard to have a comfortable position. So it's like I don't hold anything against him for like how their team did. I think this will be a much better opportunity for him. Like it's nice to see the team like rallying around him rather than like it was like the players who were blaming him got cut, and then everyone else seems to like be supporting him. The team is
communicates in English now,
right? A much better environment for him. So I think this is going to be like a lot better opportunity to really show what he's made out of, and prove the haters wrong. Just show what he's got. So I think it'll be cool to see.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of pressure on him to do well too, right? Because like I said, it's like him and Jan like are the primary carries, and like I thought he was definitely solid coming up in LCS. I feel like the hype was too high, and then the like hate was also too high. You know what I mean? It's like he came in. I think he played 7 total LCS games before playoffs, and then like went to Worlds. It's like, oh my God, he didn't do well against the world's best mid laners. Like, what a shock. The guy played less than 10 LCS regular season games in his career, right? So, like, I think they have to give him some time. And I do think knowing that, like, he is very much like a mage guy, like he likes playing those kind of style champions. The meta is pretty decent for that. And those champions are also harder to gank now because of the mid lane changes. So potentially it could be good for him.
Yeah, you definitely still have to ban his Ziggs. Some people were were testing that in Champs Queue, and he had multiple 20 kill Ziggs games where he was just dumping on people. But I definitely think he's got very stiff competition in mid lane this year. So it definitely will be a good test, I think.
All right, moving on. At number 4, we have FlyQuest, who obviously has a lot of changes to their roster. It is Nukeduck, who is the head coach, who's coming over from 100 Thieves. There's Whippo, Inspired, Jensen, Masu, and Busio. So fully clean house, right? Not a single player remaining from last year, unless I'm crazy.
And
I think that's right.
Yeah.
and it's pretty fun too, because we could start with opposite sides of the map with two very different stories. You know,
Yep.
bottom side of the map is like, oh my gosh, this NA talent coming from, challengers. Both of them have won the most valuable prospect award. Busio won it last year before he came to LCS. And then Masu, the current holder of it, being paired together. That's so cool, the talent. And then they're getting the double import, bringing Inspired and Whippo back to pro play after being off for a while. Definitely have some people definitely have some considerations if they're going to still be good. As far as their Champs Queue play so far, looks like they're still the exact same players as they used to be. Inspired especially was
Also, Inspired was like arguably best Western jungler.
he won
at the time that he
MVPs in
left.
both leagues.
Yeah.
So he's definitely going to be looking for another one. And then bringing back Jensen, I think it's cool to pair Nukeduck as a coach with Jensen, because Jensen had definitely a down year with Dignitas, and it felt like he was kind of like, well, what do I do here? I guess I just chill and play my time out on Dignitas, and our team is whatever. But I think pairing him with Nukeduck is really good, because Nukeduck obviously a former pro mid laner as well.
Played in the LCS last year.
I really liked actually Jensen on Dig. I think Jensen on Dig was like one of his better splits, because even the team wasn't good. Like, it was obviously a lower tier team, but like watching Jensen play, he seemed really motivated. Like, he was really trying to win these games. Because it would be very easy when you're on a lower tier team to just like kind of phone it in a little bit, and not necessarily like throw or anything, but not try to lose.
Yeah, we would never
Not
want to
match fixing, but
But
you're playing a little bit more WoW.
It felt like he was really giving it his all. Like, even games he didn't win, he was like constantly looking for stuff. He was making good plays, and so I think I was actually like pretty pleasantly surprised watching Jensen on Dig, and so this team to me is super interesting, because it's a lot of players who, like, Whippo, Inspired, and Jensen, they're all sort of like really good players who've had, amazing splits before, but didn't really have great recent opportunities. Like Whippo and Inspired, like not even in the league, and then Jensen on Dig. So I think that trio to me seems like they're going to be very good. The only reservation for me, I guess, is the bot lane, like Masu and Busio, because just haven't really seen enough of them to say how they're going to do.
Hype young talent.
They are. And actually, looking at the LCS bot lanes this split, like, there's a lot of new talent as well. So I'm not saying it's not going to be like the most competitive ever, but it is a lot of rookies compared to some previous splits. So like, it seems like it's a good time to get in the league as a bot laner, because you're not going to be playing against like veterans who have just been like, stomping people at
not
Worlds.
Prince, Doublelift, etc.
Yeah.
People who've been playing forever. But Masu, I feel like you can say anything, check me, but I feel like this is the most hyped prospect coming up since Danny Jojo. Like, people have a lot of excitement for Masu. I've been hearing like so much about his performance. There's maybe more talk about like a sniper or something, because he's been kind of known longer. But Masu, from like, if you talk to all the NACL guys, all the people who cast the league, people who watch the league, people who played with him, are really, really impressed with Masu and feel like he could be LCS ready right away. When I was talking to Nukeduck, he said he watched a lot of Masu tape and stuff and was like, okay, this guy's good. And then when he played with him, he was like, holy shit, he's like really good. Like, he was really, really excited after like having him play and kind of watching him play, that he thinks he's super aggressive, and that like he could be a top 80 in the league, like out the gate. Obviously the concern is going to be like, can you translate those results to stage? You know, especially as a new player, like, are you going to be nervous on stage? Are you going to be playing like you normally do? Because if not, then maybe he's going to struggle. And like Busio is still on the newer side too. It was also kind of interesting talking about Jensen, because Newcook was saying how like he felt basically Jensen's like, you know, ebbs and flows of his performance throughout his career are just like all linked to like how motivated he is, right? And he was saying that he thinks he's like hyper motivated now because Jensen really respects like the level of his teammates. So he feels like, okay, I'm actually like on a really good team. Like I need to work hard. So, you know, like, because we can actually do something really special here. So it's going to be really interesting, because I feel like a lot of people's like questions is more around like, oh, will like the attitudes gel, you know? I think people have like concerns about like, oh, is Inspired like easy to get along with and stuff. That's one of the reasons a lot of people talked about him having trouble finding a team, you know, after leaving LCS, is that people felt like he's really strong about how he wants to play the game and he can be tough to work with. But Jensen, I think, is more like willing to kind of take that like backseat role and just like let someone else pilot, it feels like, at least for in-game. But it'll be interesting to see how like the Inspired Bwipo duo works for me, because I know both those guys have like really strong opinions on how to play the game, and I feel like Busio has talked about wanting to be more of a leader and a shot caller. Like that's something he gave some interviews about. Like he liked playing with Doublelift and learning with Doublelift, but he said when he was playing with Doublelift, it's like, okay, I'm playing with the GOAT. I just have to like do what he says, you know? And he wants to be more of a leader. So it's like you have a lot of people who are potentially like pretty opinionated and wanting to kind of drive. So I feel like this roster could go like super well. Like if their bot lane is really good and everything clicks, they could be amazing and challenging for a championship. Mm-hmm. But I could also see things kind of going bad if players are not agreeing on how to play the game and whatnot, and not agreeing on like, and the bot lane maybe is not able to perform how they're expected.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of mentioning at the beginning, I actually originally did have them number 3, and then I adjusted a little bit after watching more Champsky games and just talking to so many players that were scrimming against them and against Team Liquid right now. And so maybe I'll regret not having this change, and maybe it's a little bit of just recency bias and people talking about these games that they're playing right now on new season patch, and there's so many changes, and you know, a bunch of these guys just came back to pro play and type of stuff. So I definitely do see the possible upsides. Another possible upside I see where I might have underrated them is they have a really good challenger team. And when I was talking earlier about the rise in importance of coaching staff and analysts for scouting, because we're playing live patch, to be able to have those changes in the player's hands super early on, get also the delayed draft and have more time with them on stage after you've got the draft. I think having a really good challenger team to be able to practice in secret, if you are like, oh my God, this is going to be so broken on the next patch, and you don't want to leak to any LCS teams or let anybody else in on it, I think is going to actually be another really useful tool that FlyQuest have, where a lot of the teams did drop Challenger League teams, but this Challenger team is actually so good. They have Surdy, Shaden, Quad, Sajed, and Chime. And I know a lot of those are not super famous names, and maybe Shaden is a little super famous for the wrong reasons, but
he's good.
But the team is good, and they too, you know, like have really been grinding. To the earlier point about playing the most solo queue games and playing the most challenger queue games. They definitely have. This is definitely a grinder squad too. So
yeah, Newtuk was also saying he thought that the like coaching setup was way better with this team than it was on 100 Thieves, because he said on 100 Thieves he basically showed up and like found out he kind of had to do like everything. Like he felt like, oh, I have to teach them laning, I have to do this, I have to do that. Like he felt like he was doing like multiple jobs and didn't feel like he could succeed as well with that. So it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. But I'm really excited for this bot lane. I know that both Busio and Masu want to play like hyper aggressive too. So that always makes me excited. If you know, seeing people who want to play lane dominant and want to play aggressive, it's just way more fun to watch. But you never know if it's like actually going to come across on stage, or if people just kind of do that in solo queue and then you get on stage and you're like, all right, time to farm under tower.
I mean, especially in a meta where bot is the most gankable lane, playing super aggressive.
Is Team Liquid the only LCS bot lane that kept the same bot lane from last split?
That's a good question.
I have to check them all.
Let's think. Okay, so Berserker Yon changed, Maso Busio changed, Elamich changed, Tomo Isles changed, FBI Hui changed. Yep, everything changed.
That's pretty interesting.
That is actually crazy. That's a good point. And they actually were getting TL's early game was really good already. The rest of their game was not so good, but their laning was actually really good. Shall we move on to next team?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my God, we have some differences in our rankings.
God. Well, the aggregate is number 5 for Shopify Rebellion. Kobe had him at 6. Ooh,
So you guys, yeah, big division here in our power rankings. You guys both have them at 5. So I think you can lead with the positive, because I think there are a lot of positives, and then I'll give why I changed my mind.
I'm definitely going to say, I think it's pretty obvious. There is a clear cutoff between the top half and the bottom half of the league coming into this. And so for me, like the bottom half, looking through the teams, there's a lot of question marks for me.
A lot.
But I put Shopify Rebellion number 5 because, I have faith in them. It's former TSM players in Insanity and Boogie. And while, I don't think anyone's coming in saying they're like the best players in their role this split, but I saw a lot of promising stuff from them. I feel like they improved a lot as the split went on. And also, I think this format is kind of why I'm rooting for Insanity. I think, like, playing on the live patch, he is definitely one of those, like, chef-type players. He's always in the lab, like, cooking it up. I think he's, going to surprise people with his picks and whatnot.
I guarantee Mid-Graves is going to come back, especially right now with the lethality items the way they are.
Yeah, so I think they've just got a lot of, promising players on their team. I haven't seen much from Bvoid, their AD carry, so I don't really have any comments on him. But we were seeing Fakegod come back. He's been a player he's been around for a while, has had some like solid years, some not as solid, but he's always a player that seems promising. He's definitely not bad. And then Zeyzal, who was very good on C9, then kind of has been like chilling in the academy scene for a while. But I think most people respect him as a good support, so it's cool seeing him come back. And I'm not like super confident this team is going to be amazing out the gates, but I think they have a lot of potential.
I think one of the things that I talked to Revan, he was like really emphasizing is that he really focused on picking players with like similar like mindsets and attitudes. So like he really wanted to focus on a team that he thought would like actually get along well and have really, really hard work ethics. He was kind of saying that like he felt like there's a lot of players on this team that haven't necessarily like had the success that they like deserve. Like I'm doing that kind of like in air quotes, because he felt like basically all of these players now are supposed to be in the starting roster are doing everything right. Like they're all working really hard. They're all practicing all the time in solo queue. They're having good attitudes about like improvement and being self-critical and all these things. They're great in reviews. They like take on board what the coaches tell them and really try to implement it in game. So he was like really excited about it through that lens, in that he thinks that like everyone here really is deserving of the chance and deserving of success in the LCS. What success means for this team, I think, is like somewhat up to interpretation, because I don't think they're going to be like a title contender. But I do think, if everything goes good, this team is trying, like their goals are to try like, break into the top half, right? To be one of those teams.
You mentioned the coach is Revan. Mm-hmm. What's his background?
Revan was coaching TSM before.
Okay.
And before that, he was on Cloud9 Challengers.
Cloud9 Challengers, yep.
Okay.
So he worked with Fakegod in the past as well on Cloud9 Challengers. I think he went by a different name. It's like also like Analista or something he used to go by. So I think his name has changed. So it's possible.
Yeah, I feel like with a lot of coaches, like I recognize what they look like, but on Champ Select and LCS, they haven't been showing the coach's names. So I'll be like, yo, who is that? Like I recognize him, but I do not know his name.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But like it's gonna be interesting. Like I've also heard that. So here's the thing with Fakegod. Fakegod was really good in Academy, came up to LCS, didn't do very well, went back to Academy, and I think a lot of people thought, okay, that's the end of Fakegod. But from what I've heard, like he has been getting significantly better in Academy, and he did basically everything that you could ask to get back to LCS, right? Like he won on Cloud9 in Academy, then he won on Disguised in Academy. He's been like at the top of NACL, so people are feeling he's deserving of the spot. And I'd also been hearing from a number of different people that Fakegod is actually smurfing in scrims and like slamming a lot of top laners. So like I don't know if it'll full manifest on stage, but there's a lot of players here that I'm kind of like excited to see, what they are able to bring. And similar to what you were talking about, Meteos, how, you're saying it's like, there's a lot of question marks for all these teams at the bottom, but I feel like I have a lot of faith in what Insanity's going to bring. I thought he performed really well. I think Boogie, I kind of feel like I know what I'm going to get from him. And Zeyzal was always like a really smart player. Like I feel like there's more stability. Like I feel like I have less question marks about this team than some of the other teams that rank below them.
So I've also heard that Zeyzal had chosen to stay in academy, even though he had gotten some offers that he didn't really like to be in the LCS. So, because there are some players, where you get picked up by one of the bottom LCS teams and you end up kind of regretting it after the team is just getting blasted on stage and
Can tank your reputation,
you
too.
like tanks your reputation, can like demoralize you a little bit and send you back. And when something like that happens, you start to question how you see the game and question more things about how you play in general. And so I kind of respect that. I respect that a lot from him kind of choosing his opportunity. And to me, it says a lot that he was like, you know what, I'm going to go with Revan. I'm going to go with Shopify now. Like now is the time. Let's make the move. And speaking to the mentality, Fakegod also with the interviews that he's giving seems to be in a really good headspace of, he actually went through that with the last time not having the great showing and taking so much criticism in the LCS, and seems to be super hungry. And it's pretty rare to hear super positive, glowing remarks about coaches from players, but I have heard a lot of the players directly coached by Revan talk him up and think that he has a good philosophy on how to coach and how he embraces what they think is good for them. And he identifies, all right, maybe I'm not going to be a meta follower. Our team is better at this, so we're going to play this. I think that is perfect for playing on live patch. So there are a lot of positives too here for Shopify that I was super on board with. I do think that I actually would have kept them in 5th if they had stated that Turtle is their go-to player and he is going to be the starter regardless. But them having the visa issues with B-Voy and like he's still the intended starter and Turtle's just starting, the first weekend, and then they don't know about that and they'll see, who performs better.
Yeah, he basically said it'll just be based off performance.
To me, I hate that though. I always want a hard commitment on what my roster is. To me, it's always like a demerit that you've got a position where both players know, it really depends on who plays better on this day, and you have to constantly evaluate. And if you're switching pieces, to me, like there's so much to the synergy of playing as a team, and especially in League, but in all team games, that I'm always. It really makes me always second guess every time there's going to be a designated from the beginning. This is a either or situation. I know you have personal experience with that. So.
I do not like that at all. I feel like for me, it's always been like just the coach's way of like wanting to seem like super competent to like their general managers and owners are like, yeah, we've got a 10-man roster. We can pull in anybody. Like, and what that means is it's like we lose a game. Who are we switching out this week? Like, let's go to the Reddit comments. Okay. Ooh, looks like Meteos. Not looking very good. Let's send him to Academy for a bit. So I'm not a fan of that. I agree with you. I think even just from a player point of view, because it's like when every practice, every day, you're just like worried about getting swapped out. It's like it's going to affect the way you play. You're going to be maybe more scared to take risks. You're going to really like put too much weight in certain things. So I don't think it's good for the team. I think it really is disruptive toward having like a cohesive unit and whatnot. So
yeah, it just brings in so many extra instances and possibilities for self-doubt, which are very detrimental, I feel like, to building up as a team. And everybody's all the teams are working with new rosters here that you're trying to continually build up the synergy and progress throughout the season. And if I have to worry about, oh man, did Azael have a better relationship with the coach? Like they're talking right now, and he just played Nunu.
I brought him Chipotle,
and I'm like, I'm not that good at Nunu right now. Do I need to go play some Nunu? He was playing like. you know,
yeah,
the
or like
10 things you were-
your counterpart is like watching the LCS scrims with your coach and just like shit talking you the whole time. You're just like, ooh, wouldn't have went for that gank. That's kind of weird. Oh, he's clear on this champ. So I'd do that better.
Yeah. So, like,
It gets weird fast.
So, I mean, that was one of the things where I was a little bit, which made me take one step back from Shopify. I still have there's a long list of positives
Yeah.
for this roster. But then I also, in talking to people about 100 Thieves, and maybe again, this is indexing a little bit too much into right now. But for me, I was fully ready to send. I was like, Quid is going to suck again. Like, this team is going to be terrible. Their only saving grace is they were able to pick up River from Golden Guardians because Golden Guardians blew up. I'm like, well, that was super lucky type of thing. And I was like, but from talking to people, Quid is actually doing super well right now. He's super motivated. He's been grinding and improving a lot. I know that a lot of top laners actually, like, it seems like they have it out for General Sniper because there has been so much like story around him joining LCS for so long, and he, is a confident guy. Like I heard Impact in one of the interviews was had his targets on Sniper.
Degon asked him about it, to be fair. So
he pointedly asked the
Degon
question.
asked him about what he thought about Sniper, and he's like, well, he needs to drop the ego, basically.
Yeah. And he said he wasn't good at team
He
fighting.
said he's really bad at team fighting and playing the map.
Yeah.
But I have heard some stories about Sniper. Just like he's obviously really talented mechanically. People are mostly when they're talking positively, they talk about his lane, but. I've heard he's got a lot to learn as far as like his game knowledge. People were saying like he's probably got by far the worst game knowledge of anyone in the league. Like he doesn't even know.
High praise.
Like he did like I was told this story that he was playing Rumble and he didn't know that like overheat, like when you're above 50 heat, the abilities did different things and stuff. Like didn't know they did more damage. So like things like this, right? Like
Not one of them tooltip readers.
He doesn't read tooltips and stuff. So like. The bright side of that is that there's obviously like a lot that
He's this good and he does
exactly. That's what Golden Glue is telling me is he's like there's a lot of stuff like he doesn't know that, but he's already really good. So it's like there's a lot of room to kind of like grow, but he's like a very very fresh rookie, right? Like he's coming in as soon as he can, and maybe he could have used more time in academy, but like they want him up in the LCS, and that's what's going to happen.
The last thing I wanted to say was that also Bwipo had given his interview and answered to pastry, and he was like, one of my main goals this split is that to make General Sniper not win Rookie of the Year. And I was like, whoa! Like rarely do you like.
Yeah, that's a weird answer.
Is there someone else he wants to be Rookie of the Year? Just not
No,
General
just not
Sniper. I will feed any other rookie I encounter.
I've never like heard something like targeted like that. But and of course now it's like third person telling me or whatever.
Maybe he wants Masu to win.
Maybe there was some telephone and some context got lost. And
Masu's on his
But I
team,
thought
so.
that was so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, that was really funny. But yeah, the Sniper story that I heard was really funny. There's also one about Insanity. Revan was telling me that like Insanity just like runs it down in scrims like all the time.
I
That
believe
he's just,
that.
Like that he's just he's like, oh, I'm limit testing, but he goes 0-10 or whatever. And so he was saying
does that on our flex queue
he
games,
was
too.
saying that he was like, cooking way too hard, and he's like, okay, you need to stop running it down. And like Insanity was telling him, oh, bro, don't worry, like I have an on switch.
Okay,
and so Revan told him, okay, turn the switch on then.
Let me see it.
Yeah, and apparently he started instantly smurfing every scrim. So he's like, now I can't even say anything, like because Insanity can just run down games and be like, bro, it's fine, I got the on switch.
Nah, dude. Like the problem with doing that in scrims.
Revan is hilarious, by the way. You guys should talk to him. He's so funny to talk to.
I should. The problem with doing that in scrims is the good teams do not like scrimming people like that. Like
Yeah.
you will very quickly run out of good scrim partners if you run it down in scrims.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but he's limit testing apparently.
It's so funny that then when he said he's turning it on, he actually has the results.
He flipped the switch,
to back
so
it up.
there you go. All right, we're 100 minutes in, so we're gonna have to start speeding up a little bit here. We have 100 Thieves, Dig, and IMT left. 100 Thieves is Sniper, River, Quiv, Meech,
Yeah, that's all I was
Ayla.
just
You
talking
already
about.
touched on them a little bit.
But I that's why I edged them above Shopify because of the big upsides. Like, however they came about getting River, they got River.
Yep.
And if Quid is actually performing really well right now and in a good headspace to keep improving and isn't wasn't deterred by last year. I think they actually, have a lot of upside to this team.
Yeah.
From talking to the direct scrim partners from them so far, that is even the opinion right now. So if they do have that upward trajectory in addition to that, then
this team could be potentially really good, but I could also see them being awful because there's like so many like young players and question marks, like Meech, Quid, Sniper, a lot of question marks. River, I'm like, okay, you're amazing. Like he's going to be really, really good. Even Ayla, I think there's still some question marks and stuff around. So this team could be pretty hit or miss.
We do get Ayla versus Vulcan again. So that'll be good. Yeah, I think 100 Thieves, I know from an org perspective, they have like, maybe it's not the same this split because their roster looks a little budget, but they've always had the expectation of like winning, and they like, you feel a lot of pressure playing on that team. So we'll have to see how that goes with a roster looking like this. I don't have a lot of expectations for them.
Yeah.
Like you said, River's good. Quid did not look great last year. Sniper's got a lot to prove. I think other top laners probably have some sort of like envy, you would call it, because he's been hyped up so much for being like, 13-year-old challenger, Riven one trick, like Viper's brother. Yeah. So he's definitely got a lot to prove. It's a completely different game when you go from like smurfing on, because I think he's also like in Toronto, so he's got like really low ping in solo queue. Like playing low ping solo queue smurfing on Riven is infinitely different from playing an LCS top laner. So got a lot to prove. I'm sure these other top laners are really eager to knock him down a peg.
He's not that good.
Yeah, and he's got a lot to prove. Maybe he will be that good.
And that'd be awesome. I mean, I really hope that. I think this guy has an incredibly bright future, right? Like he was obviously so good, so young. A lot of people have been targeting him as a person who could go far in pro. I just hope that even if it doesn't start out really hot, that his mental doesn't just get destroyed by that, because I think that can be really tough for rookies. When you're put in a team with a lot of other question marks and stuff, it's not like he's put in like the EG situation with Impact and Inspired and like all the stability around him. There's a lot of question marks on this roster, I think, which is tough for any rookie.
But that is a good point, because I know, especially for younger players, it can be really easy to get like gassed up when you read stuff about yourself. Like, I think for the most part, the general community sentiment has been very positive towards General Sniper. It's like almost everyone is like, oh, he's this super promising rookie. Excited. He's going to be really good. And so like that feels good as a new player. Like it gives you a lot of confidence. But the problem is you get reliant on that. And then as soon as things don't go well, that'll flip on you real quick. And you got to like know how to separate yourself from it. Like you can't let it gas you up and you can't let it bring you down. You got to just like focus on your game. But I think being young, like I went through it. A lot of people go through it. Like it feels bad when you start getting shit on.
I was going to just say that they have really good coaching staff for that specifically in Golden Glue and Spooks. Golden Glue obviously dealt with a lot of community criticism and having to deal with, entering and leaving and re-entering LCS and grinding his way through. And Spooks, Sam is a super, super positive guy. That is really good for team sports. I never actually played League with him, but I did play volleyball, team volleyball with him. So, I could vouch for his leadership.
I mean, that's one thing that actually a couple of teams really emphasized. Golden Glue was really excited that they got Spooks, because Spooks obviously was coaching with Golden Guardians. That team blew up, and they had won like a coaching staff that split. NRG also was able to pick up a few of the previous Golden Guardians people. Like they have Juves and Shoes, who I think were with Golden Guardians before. So like, you talked about coaching live, like with live patch and stuff. So a lot of the people that were really happy about their coaching staff situation were talking about it a lot and like really feeling like, hey, this is going to make a big difference. It's also Golden Glue's first time being the head coach in LCS. And so having like another, kind of big experienced coach there with him, I think does help a lot. But yeah, should be an exciting team. All right, we have the bottom two, Dignitas and Immortals. Dignitas is Rich, XU, Dove, Tomo, and Isles. And this is one where I think people just have a lot of questions about like, okay, like why Dove, why XU, like why a lot of these people. And it's kind of similar story, I feel like, with Immortals. It's the two teams that people, I think, were the most confused about some of the import choices, because Immortals ended up with Castle and Mask, who most people hadn't heard of, as well as Armeo, Tactical, and then Ole was able to return.
Yeah, I think the main question, even more than why, is who. Like, who are some of these players? We haven't really seen them at LCS, and I think, like, you know, not to dig on them, I'm sure they could be good, but a lot of people don't know who they are. And so I guess the bright side, they will have no expectations. They will have nobody thinking they're going to do well. So it's
That's quite the bright side.
I mean, it's helped people before.
I know, it's just the way you put it is so
Low
funny.
stakes,
It's like,
low pressure.
bright side, Meteos, everyone thinks you're butt. You know, it's
It's
Underdog mentality is good.
They are underdogs, absolutely. It's an 8-team league. There is always going to be an 8th place team, no matter how good you are. So I think, you know, these teams,
they're not finishing 10th. That's the bright side.
they're not getting 10th. They've got something to prove for sure.
I do think that yeah, there's going to be you know, some question marks around the imports, but both those teams are, in talking to the actual teams, they're pretty confident in what they're, which obviously they're
Everyone is
confident,
early,
right?
but-
They're like, yeah,
Nah,
we're not idiots. We
Nah, we messed up with this one. This is a go nexter.
But specifically the mid laners, Dove and Mask, you know, they're pretty confident in. But to me, for Immortals, I think if they're going to win, it's going to be a resurgence of Tactical and bringing Ole back. Like, Ole's journey is such an interesting one in competitive League of Legends because he had so many ups and downs, you know, grinding his way up. You started on Immortals, then moved up to Team Liquid, went to international competition, had to deal with so much pressure at the MSI, you know, subbing himself out even, and then, you know, having to go all the way through Korea military service and then still grinding rank 1 after he got back out in KR soloqueue and then earning a spot back on a team. Like, not many players can you know, say they've made this full journey in and out into, you know, all the highs and lows that are available in competitive League of Legends, and especially going through military service and coming back. That's very rare for
Not many players serve in the military in the
Korean
LCS
pros.
right now.
But Tactical, to me, is one who always had this really high upside, but really did depend a lot about momentum and headspace for where he is at and where the team is at. But in seeing so many of his actual plays, you can still see why at a lot of times throughout his career, people were so excited for him to be able to pop off. And so far, he has been, you know, doing a bunch with Ole and seems to be on that track. I also feel like for Immortals, it is like, and even some of the players on Dignitas, is a lot of them might have this like my last chance mentality, which sometimes can just turbo boost your drive. Sometimes it can, you know, get in the back of your head and be something that causes extra worry. But I feel like this is a lot of these players are going to be really, really hungry because of their positions.
Right, and I think going off what you said about Ole of having like this super up and down career, you kind of have that in Armeo and Tactical as well, where all of these players have had really successful splits, like done really well, and also had some like completely horrible splits. Because Armeo's coming off of one of the weirdest splits I think I've ever seen of a player on EG, where like they started out so dominant, like 9-1 or something, and then they started losing a lot of like crazy, like getting crazy stomped every game, and then they started rotating him out with Shaden, and so I have no idea what happened there, but it was a really, really weird team to watch, just because of like how hit or miss they were.
There was a couple things that from talking to Sharks, who's the Immortals coach, that he was talking a lot about was, you know, that they, like, a lot of people were flaming these teams basically for importing like kind of no-name Koreans and stuff. Both the coaches were saying, hey, like they actually looked at other options. They did try to scout and tried out, you know, various people. And the reality is the people that they tried out were not as good or not available or, you know, whatever, right? Like whether it's like budgeting issues or people not available, wanted to go to other teams, so on. So they felt like these were their strongest options. One of the things with with MarkZ that Sharks was really kind of excited about is that Sharks was saying he like really respects Sheepy, who coached UOL, and MarkZ was playing with him in ERLs and like UOL Sexy Edition, I think is actually the team called.
I love Sheepy, by the way. He's a good guy.
Yeah, Sheepy's a really good guy, and he said that he felt like people that have worked under Sheepy are prepared really well for the pro leagues and what they need to know. And he was also saying that he felt like MarkZ is like really, really, really smart about the game. And that like had by far the highest like league IQ on the team, like knows so much about the team, is like really good about, tracking things as far as being able to like track where enemy jungler is at all times and like helping his team on where to place vision and where they need to set up things. So he felt like he's like killing it in scrims and feels like he's like the best mid laner in scrims at least right now. But there's a lot of people
not killing it in scrims.
Well, we've like every team has someone that they're going to hype up, right?
Yeah.
Who's like doing well in scrims at least. So this is, I guess, that guy for this team. The other thing that I found kind of interesting was with Castle is apparently Castle is like just like a genius. Apparently he was like top ranked in his university or whatever and like in Korea and stuff. And he taught himself English fully through talking to like AI. He completely taught himself. And when he did an interview or whatever, he like reached out to them and said, I don't need a translator. Like, I want to talk to you in English. That was the first time he had ever spoken to a person in English. He fully taught himself English by talking to an AI apparently, which is kind of it's just like an interesting story. And also
that could be so many funny memes with people asking if he taught himself how to play League with AI, or is he a bot, or blah blah blah.
But it's pretty interesting, right? And also apparently when they started talking to different Korean players, they were talking to a number of Korean players in Korean Challenger, and like they asked 5 different players, all like, okay, if you could bring anyone over from like Korea with you to play with, who would it be? And every single person said Castle. So like a lot of the young Korean players apparently were really excited about Castle, which made them kind of more excited about Castle. And then when they were bringing him and they were getting MarkZ, then they felt like it made more sense to bring in Ole as well, because kind of like as a bridge, Ole is a resident, but also speaks obviously fluent Korean, is Korean. So to kind of help that work with the team. But I mean, a lot of questions, obviously. I don't think the VODs that I watched of Castle weren't super impressive, but MarkZ and Castle also did play together on KTA. So they're hoping that like that synergy will be somewhat inbuilt. But these are guys that everyone is going to be really doubting right out the gate. From the actual gameplay that I've watched of their VODs, I wasn't super impressed. So I think that expectations are going to be super low and they're going to have to like do well right away, or the community is going to be like, yep, knew it, they suck. On the dig side, there's a lot of Dove hype from what I've been hearing, as far as like this guy is actually kind of smurfing in scrims. That apparently is the player from Dig that I've heard the most positive about by far. I think the like Rich people are pretty positive on as well. And I know I'd heard from Rich. It's kind of like, the Scrim Championship for G2. People were telling me that, like, Rich was the Scrim MVP last year. And that, like, he, they think that he can really kind of still hopefully do more on stage. But, again, there's a lot of questions. Like, XU played a little bit in the LCS before, I think, didn't really perform super well, but he's been in the Dig org for a long time. Tomo and Isles, there's a lot of questions about, like, can they perform, at the top level? But at the very least, they're grinding champions queue super hard, and I think doing quite well there. So there's just, like, these teams could do better and like, rise up in the standings, but there's so many question marks that I think it makes it really hard to place it above some of the other teams that feel like they have things that are kind of like more sure things.
Yeah, I know XU also last year spent a lot of time with the Dig coaches, and watching the game with coaches can be super beneficial for you, and of course give the coaches more confidence in you, because they're like, oh yeah, he agrees with me, sees the game the way that I see it. But
good old yes man.
For Dignitas, yeah, I think it's I just hope that they actually still embrace confidence in what their players want to play. You mentioned Rich being a scrim god. Keep giving him, they let him on LCS stage play counter picks, all these lane focused counter picks. And it was really exciting, and they won some of the games. They didn't win all games.
They did win some of them.
But it was so much more, it's so much more fun to watch a team that does embrace their players' strengths and believe in what their players want to play, than copying.
Especially if you're an underdog, take
other
a
random
swing.
stuff.
Don't just play standard and lose to every team.
Exactly, especially since we're going to be on new patch, so there's going to be a lot of angles for them to abuse. So I'm looking at this team as being one of the ones that really embraces and tries whatever new thing they think is broken, and just let Rich play whatever he wants to play and make their interesting team comps and make the games cool.
Sweet. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of The Dive. Thank you, Meteos, for joining us. A good first episode. We'll do the air high five. 2 hours in, first episode down. It's going to be a really fun season. I'm very excited about it. The LCS is going to be kicking off this weekend, and you're going to make sure you want to be there. It is first game January 20th, this Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific. It's TL versus 100 Thieves. And then the finals rematch, C9 versus NRG, is going to be happening on game number 2. So we'll see y'all there.